Hi, I'm Kyle.
And I'm Trevor, and welcome to Catching Up on Cinema. If you're not familiar with the program, Catching Up on Cinema is a podcast wherein Kyle and I typically take turns introducing one another to films. Typically, this means one of us will have seen the film that we're reviewing, and the other person will be seeing it for the first time. Today is no exception. Being as it's July, we decided to do a theme month for our releases this month. That being movies about making movies. This is in anticipation of Quentin Tarantino's is it his ninth film?
Sure.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which of course takes place partially on the Hollywood backlots. So we thought it would be fun to cover movies about making movies, and in particular, we're going to be talking about movies that are actually documentaries about the making of films for the most part. So today, I got to pick the film, and I selected a documentary from 1999, directed by a fellow by the name of Chris Smith, and that movie is called American Movie. Over the course of this documentary, we trace the path of one Mark Borchardt from Wisconsin, trying to make a film by the name of Northwestern, as well as another film by the name of Colvin. The production of this documentary lasted from 1995 through 1997, so they documented a pretty substantial chunk of this man's life. So Kyle, what were your feelings on American Movie, being as this is your first time seeing it, and this is a movie that I've seen countless times?
Well, it's interesting seeing an independent filmmaker, and this is as independent as you can possibly get. Somebody trying to make a film. Last week we did Hearts of Darkness, a filmmaker's apocalypse, and this was an established director having difficulty creating a film. This is an alcoholic in Wisconsin trying to make a film or a couple of films. Yeah, he's an interesting fella, and him aside, like this documentary is, like you said, shot over 3 years, or I'm sorry, it started in '95 and ended in '97, so it's a little over 2 years that they were filming this, I believe. Yeah, it's. I just finished watching it, and I went through all the emotions. I'm like, man, this guy is inspiring. I'm like, oh man, this guy's really pissing me off, and like, and then other times I'm just like, like. Kind of like when Christian Bale in The Fighter, like he sees his documentary and he thinks about his comeback, and they were just filming him being a crackhead. You get kind of those moments where you're like, oh, this is bad. Like this is
Yeah, it has almost like a National Geographic feel to it, where it's like you're watching a creature in the wild, and parts of you are conflicted about the experience, where it's like, oh god, am I supposed to be seeing this? It's like, but the hyenas are over there. It's like, don't let the cubs get over there.
Well,
they're in danger.
If you liked Apocalypse Now, Hearts of Darkness is interesting because you can just watch like how this finished product came about, and you're like, well, this is really fascinating. This, on the other hand, you're just watching a guy who is less than capable run with an idea and barely get there, and you almost don't even care about him getting there. Actually, near the end, I'm like, I really just want to watch it. I want to watch the whole film. I want to see what happened. And I don't know how long it ended up being. We got to see a few clips.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I did a little research while I was waiting for you to finish watching the film. Colvin is actually on the DVD for American Movie.
Oh man,
I have not watched it, but I can get it to you if you'd like to see it.
I would like to see.
I mean, he says numerous times that I think Northwestern is intended to be like a half-hour film, like a 35-minute film.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine Colvin is not far from that. I haven't actually watched Colvin, but I think what's really interesting is that you as you mentioned with Hearts of Darkness, that's an example of watching a man journey into darkness, a professional filmmaker take this soul-searching journey into darkness to try to get this fucker made. American Movie isn't so much a movie about making movies, it's more just like a portrait of an individual.
Yeah.
It's a profile of a man at a certain point in his life. And the way, like, in his opening narration that he speaks of things, it sounds like this is not his first shot. This is not the first time he's attempted to take on something this big before, and there's this sense that this time will be different. I'll do it right this time. I won't fuck up like I did before. But so much of what we see unfold throughout the course of the documentary suggests that it's like, no, you're in this like Sisyphusian struggle of perpetually shooting yourself in the foot whenever you're about to get to the top of that mountain.
There's a comedian I like, Kyle Kinane. Actually, he's got the same middle name. First and middle name as me. He's from the Chicago suburbs, and he has a joke about the creeping oppression of the suburbs. And this movie definitely, you can feel it. I can feel it in this movie, and I definitely know what he's talking about. He's just like, we could stay at Denny's, and just just smoke cigarettes, and like if we keep ordering coffee, we can just sit there. And he's like, "What time is it?" And he's like, "Holy shit, I'm 35." It's just like. And like that's what this guy is. He's just like, I have this dream about what I want to do. I don't want to be a factory worker. I'm trying to make ends meet with these little shitty jobs here and there. I've got a dream, but he just keeps drinking his way into no progress. And he's like, I'm 30 years old, and he's like, I have to clean up some dude's shit at a funeral
That was a big moment later in the documentary.
Yeah, spoiler. But yeah, that's one
the big moment wherein he found shit.
It's just one of those moments where you're just like, wow, like he's just almost spinning his wheels, and he doesn't realize he's just spinning his wheels, and it's kind of sad to watch.
That's what really draws me to this film. I saw it. I can't remember how far back, but this and Ed Wood are like on repeat, just in the background in whatever living situation I'm in, whenever I need to get the creative juices flowing. Because parts of this documentary, it needs to be said, are like crushingly depressing, but other parts of it are very uplifting, and it's edited beautifully in such a way that like it has a nice rhythm to it. It feels like a journey, and every time I watch it, I get something from it, whether it's a laugh or like a poignant moment or something. But yeah, it's really fascinating to me. Like, I don't want to completely front load this episode, but what you're saying about the crushing weight of the suburbs, I think that shit's real, man.
It's real.
Like I haven't really experienced it myself, maybe touches of it here and there, but there's this attitude that I've encountered in certain jobs I've had among certain social circles, where there's this sense of, like, quote, not wanting to be one of them, where it's like that's what draws there. Certain jobs attract certain types of people, like warehouse work, for instance. Typically, you find antisocial individuals because they're the types of people who just want to keep their head down and typically don't like other people.
Yeah,
and stuff like that. Like I feel like that's the kind of mindset that Mr. Mark Borchardt has, where it's like I pursue this not because it's like my driving passion in life, but more because it takes me in a different direction than the people around me.
Yeah.
And I have nothing but disdain for those people. So it's like, even though this isn't a healthy endeavor, even though deep down I know this isn't going to get me anything, it keeps me from getting into that factory like everybody tells me I should do.
Yeah.
Which honestly probably would work out better for him in the long run.
Yeah, he'd make more money.
He would make more money, but he'd be betraying himself, and I guess it's more than he can stand.
Yeah.
I don't know what became of him in more recent years. I know he's in his 50s now, but I know he actually went on to take on a few other film projects, including a documentary, which he completed.
Nice.
Northwestern, to my knowledge, has not been completed.
Yeah.
Coven, obviously, as we see by the end of this film, was completed, but Northwestern apparently is still on the shelf somewhere. So, without further ado, I guess we should get to the documentary proper.
Yeah.
Our opening shots are in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. There's a lot of driving scenes in this documentary. Quite a few.
I felt like the Trailer Park Boys a little bit. Like, legit watching this, I'm like, this feels like an episode of the Trailer Park Boys.
Yeah, I mean, the way that show is filmed, even it has a similar look and feel to it. But yeah, this opening shots are him driving at night, Mr. Mark Borchardt, and he's just, man, he goes.
Yeah.
Like he goes on these like rambling tangents that it's all very lucid. Sometimes his word use is a little suspect. Like sometimes it's like I don't know that word you're using right now means what you think it does, but for the most part he's pretty lucid.
I think that if you're an alcoholic aspiring filmmaker and somebody makes a documentary about you, that documentary is going to be better than anything you put out, because we did a documentary, or we did an episode on Overnight, which is a documentary about a functioning alcoholic turned director turned back to probably functioning alcoholic.
Well, that's the curious thing about cameras is it's very hard to document something without changing it. That I forget who said that, but it's very true. Whenever a human is aware of a camera in the room, you can almost bank on them always changing their behavior in some regard. And I feel like Mark is the type of guy who plays to the camera a little bit. He has a bit of pro wrestler in him. Like he cuts promos. So I think he tries to put his best foot forward whenever the camera's running. But yeah, he's rambling while he's driving, and he makes mention of like 15 years ago. So like 15 years ago he was trying to make a movie or something. I guess things fell apart and he didn't quite finish it. He's like, well, it's gonna be different this time, man. Like, I'm gonna do it right. And he can't slow down to the point that I can like actually take down his quotes. But one that I got was like, not just to drink and dream, but to create and complete. So that's where he's at the beginning of this documentary. It's like he's aware that his drinking and his, I don't know, lack of work ethic keeps him from accomplishing what he wants. But at this very moment, he's like, no, I'm going to knuckle down. I'm going to get shit done.
Well, I feel bad because I didn't make these life choices, but where I got to now, I didn't really get to by listening to people that were around me in this kind of environment. Like, I grew up in southern Indiana, very similar to where this guy grew up, very very similar landscape, and you just don't have people that can point you in the right direction because this isn't what they've done with their lives. Like, he needed somebody to say like, hey, if you really want to get into film, like, you maybe need to go to school, maybe get a major in like film studies, work on a production, not even as a director, just work as something, maybe just an assistant of some kind. Get in there that way, learn some things, and then maybe one day you'll be able to direct your own film. But he didn't have anybody pointing him in the right direction, so he's just like, I'm taking this all on myself. I have a vision, and he had a passion for it since he was very young.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I think they say since he was like 12, yeah. Like 12, 14, around there. But there's more to it than that, and that is a huge part of it.
There's
more. There are a lot of interviews with his family and his social circle, and a lot of folks, especially blood relatives of his, actively discourage what he chooses to do with himself.
Yeah.
So that's not healthy right from the get-go. That imagine
not
being 12 and having your dad say no, put down the camera. Like, fuck, that sucks. But
he's fighting an uphill battle. He's fighting an uphill battle that has like no reward at the end of it. He's just like, I'm gonna do it. I'm like, yeah, you're gonna do it, maybe, but there's not a lot that's gonna come from it.
But it's this horrible cycle where it's like,
yeah.
part of the desire attached to it is to spite the people who tell him he shouldn't.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, he has that gigantic chip on his shoulder, that rebellious streak that more than likely keeps him from seeking counsel. Where it's like, instead of seeking, someone to do like an apprenticeship under, or like taking on lowly PA work on an actual professional film shoot.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, nah, man, I'm going to do it my way because I've been to film school. I know how to make a movie. And it's, I can relate to that. I have a bit of that. Where it's like, and it's difficult to be confronted with, but at the same time, it's like, man, I don't want to end up like this guy. So he goes on his little tirade in the car, and I think we're introduced to Tom Shimmels, who is an actor who will pop up in several of the productions that were shown snippets of throughout the documentary. He mentions that he met Mark doing a radio show. Mark apparently does like Halloween radio shows in his hometown that they play annually. And then I think we cut to Mark, and he's behind an ancient laptop.
Oh yeah.
It's this gigantic gray brick that he's typing on, and he's apparently like writing a script for something that has to be finished with like in an hour or something. Something ridiculous. Like he makes mention of, this isn't the 11th hour, this is the 12th hour, man. And he's rambling, he's yelling about how he has to write the script. He's a little irritated that this documentary crew is like poised right in front of him asking questions while he's trying to get this shit done. Then he points out the fact that he has people out in the front yard putting up scarecrows. He's like, they have no pragmatic application of what's going on right now, but idle hands are the devil's workshop, man. I need to give him destinies. Yeah, he says, I wish I could give him destinies, but I have to adhere to this keyboard. So basically he's saying, I'm keeping these people busy just for the sake of being busy while I, do the important shit, which, in film work or whatever, that is something that happens. But it's just funny that he's 100% aware that he has these people doing a bullshit task right now.
I was going to say, it was just from his procrastination. It wasn't like he was caught up doing something else. It was just like, no,
oh,
he
yeah,
just didn't do it.
The other shoe drops here in like a couple minutes. Like,
yeah.
Like literally like 100 seconds from now, the other shoe drops. But in between that, we get introduced to one of the most memorable people in this film, Mike Shank, who is a spectacular human being. Yeah,
I have him as Mike, my God, Shank. That's what I had his nickname.
Why my God?
He has moments in this. It's just he's just so sad. Like he's probably the saddest person in this whole documentary. Some of the things he says, I feel the worst for him than anybody else in this movie.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Like he underplays like the innate sadness in some of the things that he says, where it's like, oh my God, Mike, that's dark.
Yeah.
But he's so flat and monotone over most things that, like, unless you're actually paying attention to the words he's saying, you wouldn't pick up on the emotion behind them. But yeah, he has a lot of darkness in his life. Yeah. But he's also completely fried his brain with acid.
With PCP.
Yeah. What was it? Acid and PCP?
No,
at the same time?
So he thought it was acid, and they're like, yeah, this is PCP with some kind of, like, downer in it. And
he said it was laced with something. It was like, oh, Jesus.
It was PCP laced with a downer, and he thought it was acid. So it might have actually been acid, PCP, and some kind of downer in it. But, yeah, I just couldn't figure. I'm like, I thought he was maybe challenged. I thought maybe there was something wrong with him. I'm like, no, I think he's literally just fried his brain.
No, his brain is goo. It is pudding.
I feel so bad for the guy.
I feel bad for him too, but he's asked a few times in this film, "Are you happy, man?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm very happy." Yeah. And his demeanor, despite the innate darkness that's there, like his demeanor is so affable. Like if I had him in the room, he'd just make me smile. I think that's a huge part of why Mark keeps him around.
Yeah,
it's like they're good buddies, and it's like I just need a laugh at something. It's like, oh hey, Mike. Like, let's invite Mike over.
And what's interesting is Mike is actually a very talented guitarist, and I noticed he's really good at playing. I noticed the songs that he was playing on the acoustic. I used to do the same thing. The reason why I did the same thing is because I didn't have an electric guitar, and you want to play these songs, but all you have is acoustic. I'm like, that made me feel even worse. I'm like, he's a grown man who has to play these songs on an acoustic guitar, and he obviously lives with his mother, and he just can't afford. He most likely just can't afford an electric guitar, and I'm like, that really broke my heart because I made that realization. I'm like, God damn it, poor guy.
Yeah. I mean, the situation around his vices are maybe the saddest part of him. It's like he traded one addiction or two addictions or three addictions for scratch tickets.
Yeah.
Which is really sad. But yeah, he really is actually pretty talented. In fact, I think all the music on the soundtrack for the most part is him.
I think he's
like even that Mr. Bojangles, like, the tune, the melody that plays throughout the film. I don't think the lyrics at the end are him. Like, I don't think those are his vocals.
No.
But yeah, he's pretty handy on the guitar. So we cut to Mike Shank just for a second, just to introduce him and his epicness. By the way, we should probably describe from a visual standpoint what these guys look like.
Oh yeah, we this is a podcast. I forgot. We have to yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I'll explain. If you've never seen who Lil Stevie is, check out a YouTube video of Lil Stevie. That is what Mark looks like. He has he has two different hairstyles going on. In the front, he has like a feathered, almost like mid-2000s, like the hair that was going on with the flip up. But hidden in the back, he has a Billy Ray Cyrus mullet.
Yeah, it's a power mullet.
It's a power mullet. It's
a power mullet, and then he's got like goggles, not glasses.
Yeah.
Like, thick, big glasses, and he's got a goatee. He's a lanky fella.
Mm-hmm.
He's got to be like over 6 foot. He's relatively thin, but he's not fit. He's just thin. But yeah, he's a lanky guy. Definitely stands out in a crowd. He's got a really narrow skull too, by the way.
Yeah.
And contrast that with Mike Shank, who has like, what would you describe his hairstyle as?
It's vaguely long. Okay, just picture. Okay, these two are what Jay and Silent Bob are.
He looks like a roadie. They both look like roadies,
They
actually.
do look like roadies. This is what Jay and Silent Bob really are. Even their demeanor, it's exactly Jay and Silent Bob. You have tall Jay who's just running his mouth all the fucking time, and then you've got short Bob who's just like chubby he's got like a mustache, he's got long hair, doesn't really say too much. It's Jay and Silent Bob basically.
Wow, damn, I hadn't thought of that.
There you go.
Really hit the nail on the head there. So there's your reference.
Yeah, if you put some Thin Mints in the freezer, you have your mind blown twice today.
Unfortunately, I have no Thin Mints.
Yeah.
And my freezer is caked up with ice, so I got to scrape that shit. It's leaking on the floor, man.
Oh, man.
So, cut from Mike Shank. Really, all he's there to do is say, "Yeah, I used to party with Mark. I've known him since we were kids."
That is perfect.
I know, it's practiced. That's really all he's there to say for a minute. So then we cut to them record.
Oh man, that was good. Thank you.
Thank you. Then we cut to the recording of a radio drama called The Creeps. And this, I don't know what the fuck this is. Like, this is madness. So it's a room full of actors, and they're doing the radio play thing where you have all your actors, all your talent in the same room together, recording at the same time. And what's amazing about all the dialogue, and this pops up a couple times in this movie, is that you can hear Mark.
Yeah.
Like other people are speaking it, but you can hear Mark Borchardt. And I guess that's kind of a good thing in the sense that it's like a signature. Where it's like, oh, he has an identifiable voice. It's not good.
No.
But I can tell it came from him. But there's
what's your line? Do you have a line? Because one of my favorite lines from this movie, I have a couple, but it's definitely from this scene.
Is it surprise?
No. It's when a lady is going back and forth with a guy, and she goes, "Take a motherfucking wild guess." And just her delivery, I'm like, yeah, that he wrote that. Take a motherfucking wild guess.
Yeah, that came directly from Mark Borchardt's brain.
Yeah.
But yeah, we get to see some actors go back and forth, like just spitting dialogue at each other. We get introduced to the thespian of the group. Was it Richard Jorge or something?
Is he the older guy? The
Yeah.
chubbier older guy?
Yeah.
Oh, he is a thespian.
He is a thespian.
That man has taught himself a drama class or two. Yes.
Yeah. He is Brian Cox from Adaptation. People find love. The people lose love.
Fuck.
He's that guy. Fuck. So the one quote I wanted to throw out there from the radio drama recording, and I think this is interspersed like between footage of him talking in the car and actual like candid footage of him during the recording session with a beer in his hand, by the way.
Of course, yes.
He's ruminating on the drive home, basically, after the recording of the radio drama. He was like, I was smoking dope and drinking beer. I realized that I wasn't even a director. And it's like, no, Mark, no, you weren't. Basically, he actively expresses frustration over the performances of the actors. Like, he knew they weren't delivering. Like, he was unhappy with how things were unfolding. But he was totally disengaged from the process in the moment, and it made for a product he wasn't happy with.
Yeah.
Which we'll see happens more than once in his life.
By the way, I'm not trying to make fun of this guy because I mean he's
No,
accomplished more than
God,
you and I
no.
have, as because I'm not a filmmaker.
He made a fucking movie.
Yeah, I mean we're not downplaying this at all. Like, oh, it's so fucking easy. I don't know what his problem is. We're not making fun of him. This is it's a tough situation to be in and try to come up with a movie. Like it's tough.
There are so many layers to this struggle. It's not just the making of the movie. There's the bills that we're about to get to. There's the family situation. He has 3 kids.
Damn it! Oh my goodness, you ruined it because I got to this.
I'm sorry.
We got to that part and I'm like, oh my god,
that is quite the reveal.
He has 3 kids. I'm like, oh, look at him. He's such a good uncle. Like he's leaning down to give the girl like a hug. Yeah, I'm like, oh, he's got a daughter. I'm like, wow. And then somebody says he's got 3 kids. I'm like, motherfuck, how's he have 3 kids? But we'll get there. Jesus.
Yeah, we'll get there. But there are many layers to this struggle. And what's more, something that absolutely cannot be glossed over is the filming of this documentary was in the mid to late 90s. Everything he's shooting is on 16 millimeter. So all the editing and sound had to be done analog. So this is pre-digital. So this is a man trying to make a film using, by today's standards, like, difficult to use, somewhat antiquated equipment. He's cutting fucking film to edit it.
Yeah.
Imagine this fella if he was born 20, 30 years later.
Good point. I'm glad you brought that up.
It's something that we'll have to come back to because I don't want to get into it just yet.
Yeah.
But that's something to keep in the back of your mind when we're talking about all of his logistical struggles. Because, like, man, if he just had a fucking handy cam or a phone, so much of the shit could just be handled for him. He wouldn't have to stress about all of it, especially since he's literally the only competent person on the set most of the time.
The one main actor he has that he does the kitchen scene with, that guy, I appreciate that guy.
That guy has a beautiful temperament about him where it's like he's a trooper.
Yeah.
Like he will do stuff for you if you ask.
If he had worked for Kubrick, he would have been like, this is one of the best productions I've ever worked for. This is fantastic.
That would have been so beautiful to like do a making of like The Shining or something and like cut from Interview with Shelley Duvall to him.
Shelley Duvall.
She's like, it was a nightmare. And then he's like, oh, it's great. I love it here.
I remember I read that Jack Nicholson, when he was dating Angelica Houston at the time, she said that he came back one day after filming and just collapsed on the bed and slept for like 12 hours. Like he was so exhausted he didn't get a shower, didn't even say hi. He just went boom. And this guy would have been like, this is the greatest. I just love working with Stanley Kubrick. It's great.
Yeah, shout out to Tom Shimmels. He's a stand-up guy.
Shut up, Tom.
So our opening credits, which, my God, we're just getting there. Opening credits, this scene always makes me laugh. For all the wrong reasons, of course. It plays over Mark Borchardt opening his bills. So he's cutting open the mail. And every single article of mail that he opens is a bill of some sort, whether it be a credit card debt of some sort, a phone bill, insurance payments, all sorts of stuff. And he's rambling about making movies and like how life kind of sucks. And then he keeps rattling off these number figures. It's like, oh my God, this guy's financial situation must be just complete hell. And then he opens a letter. He reads it out loud. He says, your AT&T Universal card has arrived. Oh, kick fucking ass. I got a MasterCard. Life is kind of cool sometimes.
I could hear...
And this it's amazing. Just the timing where he goes from like talking about how dire his financial situation is to, oh, kick fucking ass.
I've got another credit card. I could hear my mom in the background going, oh my. Oh no.
Oh gosh.
Oh gosh. Oh, that's not good.
Oh gosh.
Oh, sweetie honey, wait. No.
So following this, we drive out to the community college, and we're putting up flyers for a casting call because Mark Borchardt, I think this is the stage of the film wherein he's dead set on doing a film by the name of Northwestern, which to date I'm still not entirely certain what the premise of the film is. We see excerpts of it sprinkled throughout the documentary, but it's an unfinished film, and I don't quite know what the intention was behind it.
It's odd that he would pick Northwestern because they're a Midwestern state, if anything.
That was not lost on me.
They're not Northwestern, North Central even. I'd give him North Central United States. Yeah, it's basically just a bunch of teenagers drinking and smoking pot.
That's all the footage I saw?
All the footage is teenagers drinking and smoking pot.
Yeah, well, he does make reference a few times to this ideal of his he has that at one point someone does ask him to articulate it better, because he expresses it several times, but nobody seems to understand it. Mm-hmm. I don't understand it, but he does make reference to, like, the frontier.
Yeah.
And when I think frontier, I think, the Western territories and stuff, so maybe it's an allusion to that. I don't know.
He was saying, it was interesting, his quote was somewhere along the lines of, like, people didn't, like, what did people do back then? They just drank. They drank, and they drank, and they drank, and that's all they did. There was nothing else to do. And people still came up with stuff, I think was his idea. And he's like, that's what this is. He's like, I'm not going to do anything else. I'm just going to drink, and I'm going to come up with something. Okay.
Yeah. Your guess is as good as mine.
I'm guessing.
It's an incomplete film for a reason. So at this point, I think we get introduced to Mom and his brothers, his older brothers, I believe, Alex and Chris.
I didn't write down their names.
Alex, I think, is the one with the glasses.
Is that the one with the Hooters shirt?
Yeah, and then Chris is the one with the bug eyes, with the dead stare.
Yeah.
And the Howie Mandel hair. Howie Mandel from, like, the early 90s.
Oh,
Howie Mandel.
I was going to say,
No. But yeah, they all talk about the fact that, like, Mark was a little bit of a weird kid, but he's been into movies since he was 12, mostly horror films. And you get a sense that Mom is, like, quietly supportive for the most part. She has reservations for fucking sure. But his brothers seem either dismissive or, like, actively discouraging of his interest in film. So right from the get-go, it's like, maybe not the best living situation. We get a few more details about that later on, but for now it's just like, he's got two shit-heel brothers who...
I would say I like his mom. She's really nice. She seemed like she's more of an enabler than anything else. I wouldn't say that she's super helpful. The brothers are not supportive, really. Yeah, I agree. It's not a great. It's not a positive environment for creativity or progress.
Yeah, absolutely. You're dead on about the mom though. As I don't know, warm-hearted as she seems to be. You gotta cut the cord at some point.
Yeah.
So we go to a pitch meeting, and this is where we get to see Mark Borchardt in his element. Because the man does have a fucking silver tongue.
I was gonna say he's doing a Troy Duffy. He's like, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. Yeah, like he's.
Oh yeah, no, he can talk.
He's spitting hot fire.
He can cut a spit hot fire.
He spit a hot fire. Like he about had me convinced. I'm like, well, shit, dude. I think this thing's gonna go off without a hitch.
Yeah, shut up and take my money.
You on Venmo?
But yeah, he conducts this pitch meeting, and he's talking about this film with, I believe it's a couple of financiers of some sort. He has a guy who is. His on-screen title, I wrote it down later, is like the prop master. He's like effects and props guy. And he seems to be fairly experienced in the film industry. And then we have like a production manager guy, so logistical kind of guy. And then we have like a casting director guy. And all these people seem to have some experience in the film industry to some degree. I don't know if any of them is going to be directly financing the film, but this is Mark trying to put a team together to get the shit done.
Well, I'm assuming these guys probably work with or for the university, because he was definitely at a community college.
I think you're right, yeah.
He was dropping flyers at the community college. He actually does work at the University of, is it Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Wisconsin? Yeah. He actually goes there to splice up the footage, so I think he's probably working with some kind of associate professors, I would assume.
So cut in between this, we get introduced to Ken Keane, who has Hulk Hogan's haircut.
I fucking love Ken Keane. He's what really drove it home for me. This was like, when I saw this group, I'm like, I'm not gonna say their names. That's my buddy X and that's buddy Y. I'm like, if I had had motivation and been taller, I might have tried to pull off something like this with these two guys easily.
I did this shit on a very, very small scale, like when I was younger. I mean, I still do this shit on a very small scale from time to time. I mean, I could, in some ways, I can think of this podcast as an example of me still trying to do this shit. Again, I'm a risk-averse person, though, so we keep it small. We keep it small here.
This also costs hopes and dreams to do, basically.
Yeah, I mean, this cost, what, a $30 Amazon mic?
Yeah, it's pretty cheap, and then the storage space.
There you go. So yeah, I can identify with that. Like I used to do that shit on the playground in like grade school, where I'd like get everybody together and I'd like try to throw together a game or like imagine a story that everybody could participate in on the fly.
I used to do that.
And I'd get frustrated with people because I'd be like, "You're ruining my vision." They're like, "I don't know what your fucking vision is." Like, you're out of the game. I'm gonna kill your character off.
I actually remember.
So I can relate.
I actually remember very specifically a time when I had a box of runts, and I was with my next door neighbors, my younger brother, and I doubt he'll remember this, but it was like, let's act like these are drugs, and we try to entice people to take the drugs, and then we arrest them. And then I was like eating it. I'm like, to an imaginary person, like, you want some drugs? And then we would like beat them up.
You bust them.
Definitely a big Walker Texas Ranger fan when I was a kid. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. But yeah.
Did you have stretchy jeans so you could bust out those kicks?
I had cowboy boots. I'll tell you that much.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. Like
Okay.
I'm with you.
So, like, to stress the point further, the thing that jumped out at me about Ken Keane during his introduction here is that he mentions that he's a couple years younger than Mark, and he's known him since he was like 12 or 14 years old.
Yeah.
So Mark was like the ringleader. He had his shithead friends. They'd get together and they'd do stupid shit together. So Mark was usually the ringleader, and Ken Keane would like just do whatever he said because Mark is the older guy. Mark's the guy with the camera. Let's fucking do some stupid shit. So they would make these movies, and we get to see some really great clips of them, actually.
Yeah.
One of them's called The More the Scarier from 1980. And it's black and white, I believe. It's basically like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre style film.
Yeah.
A little raw, more. It's like Night of the Living Dead meets Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh, we'll get there.
But apparently they made like 3 of them.
Yeah.
And this like made me like almost tear up because I was like, I did this shit.
Yeah.
Like, this is exactly what I used to do. Because I mean, I've mentioned it a couple times on the show. Like the running gag throughout all the films I made in like high school and stuff was people would always die in the bathroom because it was a lot easier to clean up the mess off tile, and we didn't want to stain the carpet at my friend's apartment. So like almost every video we made was like it was either a gun or a drug deal gone bad.
Oh yeah.
And then somebody would inevitably end up going in the bathroom and getting shot. And we'd come up with new ways to spray blood. The most epic thing we did was we rigged up a pesticide sprayer, like with a pressurized hose to go like spray blood. Like
that's pretty good.
Yeah,
That's smart.
We cut a hole in a shirt and like sprayed it through a tube. It was pretty awesome.
That's pretty
like,
good.
It looked good. Yeah, I know. But yeah, they made these films together, and Ken Keane, I guess, is like just a fixture on any production Mark's ever done. He's just this little toady. And then we go out location scouting. So Mark's rolling along. He's really dead set on getting this Northwestern film in production. He's doing location scouting. He has something picked out that he wants to. He's picturing it as like kind of a haunted house or a haunted mansion of some sort. Mm-hmm. He's rambling about movies, and it's kind of interesting because you get the sense that it's like, oh, he's not completely full of shit. Like, he actually knows films. Like, he's referencing classic films. He has some background, like an education in film.
He has a lot of books. Did you see all the books on his shelf?
Yeah. He takes it very seriously.
He does. Well, yeah, he takes it seriously. He takes it as seriously as he can. Yeah, I was surprised to see like all those books on there. Like, he has an idea of what he's doing. Like, and you can definitely tell from the way he's directing people and the way he's positioning the camera and even the finished product. You're like, okay, yeah, he has a grasp of what he's doing. Much better than I do, I can tell you that much. Yeah.
Well, it's the best way I heard it described, and it comes up in just a minute here is he has like a primeval understanding of filmmaking, where it's not like learned. It's not purely wrapped in technique and like traditional filmmaking. It's just he has this hazy image, like a silhouette of how you get this shit done. So some of the things that come out of his mouth, it's almost like that's the expectation, where it's like, oh, this is what a filmmaker says or does, so that's what I will do, without entirely understanding. I do have confidence in him as a filmmaker, but I feel like maybe he should just be a camera guy.
I was about to say the same thing. I'm like, he cannot write a script. That's the thing.
No, he shouldn't be writing.
No.
He shouldn't be acting. He's not a director. He doesn't know how to direct.
I mean, the camera loves him.
He doesn't provide direction.
For what he's doing, if he was the DP or something like that, like, he would be really well. Because honestly, for his look and the style of films that he's going for, he has the look for a character in one of those films. Because
yeah, well, I mean, they come from him, so yeah, that makes sense. But his shots, like, the images that he puts together are actually somewhat striking. Like, I don't know if it's just the grainy quality of the black and white, but like his compositions, his lighting, like there is something there.
Yeah.
So I feel like if you took the human element out of it, like if you distanced him from the actors in some regard and just had him focus on making good images, he might actually be pretty fucking good.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, during his location scout, he references films like Manhattan and The Seventh Seal. Yeah. And it's funny because he actually speaks directly to the documentary crew and says, like, have you seen those movies, man? And, like, I think you hear a no. And it's like, oh. It's like, really?
He did drop The Seventh Seal on them. I was actually surprised with that. I'm like, holy shit. Have you seen The Seventh Seal?
Well, I think he did go to some form of film school. I don't know, like, to what degree, but... he does have an education in film to some extent, and he does have a passion for film, and that speaks volumes about like how far it's taken him, just like pure passion. But this is where we're introduced to Dean Allen, who was one of the cooler guys, I think, anyway. He was the one that, I think, was he wearing dog tags or something?
I don't remember which one Dean was.
He is the props and effects guy, and he seems like one of the more grounded individuals in the documentary. So we're introduced to him at this point in it, and he has a heart for Mark because he sees a guy with gumption. Like, he sees a young man who has a dream and wants to get it done no matter what. And like Dean's attitude here is really refreshing, because like he kind of laughs at the idea. Is like he sees that, yeah, I don't have that much confidence in his competency as a filmmaker, but he's like, the way he phrases it is like, yeah, I can give up 10 weekends to help someone fulfill a fucking dream.
I remember that guy saying that.
Yeah, he was very cool, and he's in the background of a lot of scenes in this, and you can tell that's like, that's his attitude. It's like, I know this isn't going to get me anything, but it means so much more to this guy than it does to me, so I'll do it. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, we cut to another production meeting, and Mark is doing the frames with his hands. And he's like talking up the scenes he's gonna put together. He talks of Northwestern as like the next great American film, man. Like American actors in an American production. But then we get to the cast reading, and this was a really interesting scene because I guess these were the people that arrived for the casting call. And we get some footage of folks reading Mark's script back and forth, and they're going over the scene where it's like it sounds like a marital spat or something, where it's a man and a woman, and the man is basically yelling at the woman for making long distance phone calls to her shithead brother or whatever. Yeah. We go through several actors doing these lines back and forth, and at one point we cut to him and Mike sitting outside, and Mark is expressing frustration. He's like, man, they're butchering my words, man. Like, and then he jumps in there. And what did you think of his acting performance?
Not very good. A little over the top for my taste. But I mean, it wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen, of course. But I'll send you a video of the worst acting I've ever seen. It's a line reading by a guy, and it's pretty funny. But yeah, not that great. Actually,
is it from Batman Forever?
No. It's for something.
Is it from Troll 2?
No, it's not from Troll 2. I'm surprised you actually didn't pick that one. The documentary for Troll 2. No, actually, the people that he's watching are actually doing a decent job. The actors that he's actually done the casting call for. Mm-hmm. But he's not liking it.
Yeah, he's distraught. Like he feels that none of these actors get what he's trying to say here, and so he jumped in there as an actor because he felt that nobody else was doing it. And I think this is a very revealing moment, and I think this is again one of his biggest failings as a filmmaker. It's that one of the quotes I remember from my friend who actually is a filmmaker is that part of filmmaking is learning to trust, is learning that your fingers can't possibly touch every facet of the production. So you need to learn to surround yourself with people who you can trust, and then actively trust them to do what you need them to do. Mm-hmm. And then the film will find itself. And seeing a guy try to be the DP, the director, the lead actor, the writer, probably the fucking caterer, like trying to see a guy do all that, like, speaks to his insecurities, I guess. It's like,
well, also he has nobody else to do it. That's the problem.
This is true.
He's the only one doing it. He's the only one that cares about it.
There's no one else.
There's nobody else.
There's no one else.
There's no one else.
His whole life is just in a manila envelope. There's no one else.
You're going to get shot in the head by some dude who's about to get shot in the head. Nobody knows.
Who's also going to get shot in the
head.
Who's
also going to get shot in the head. The amount of headshots in the last 5 minutes of that movie. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's The Departed, if you're not aware.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
Spoiler alert, everybody dies.
Yeah. So, cut to the airport. This was an interesting scene. Very interesting. I don't know if he did this just for the documentary crew or if this is actually something he does, but if it is, I tip my hat to the guy. That's kind of fucking cool. So, Mark Borchardt is parked at the airport. And the reason he does this is because there's nothing out there. This is in the age before smartphones. We saw his laptop earlier in the movie. It's not equipped to handle this.
No.
He's trying to get some writing done, and to force himself to do it, he sits in his freezing cold car in the parking lot of an airport and just writes until he gets shit done. So this whole scene is just him sitting in a car talking to himself with a pen and paper and just writing. And it's interesting because I didn't notice it until this time, this particular viewing, but he has like little props in his car, like on his dashboard, like with little like number markings and X's. So I guess he's like tracking his progress while he's working. I was like, damn, like that's work ethic. I mean, it doesn't strike him all the time, but
no.
Like to do that, like that's something that I don't find within myself too often. I think the most recent occasion I actually did something like that was I went to the atrium at a museum to write a best man speech, like 2 days before the wedding.
Oh, nice.
But it was like, this has to get done, so I'm going to remove myself from all my comforts and just like, this is all I got. I have a coffee, a table, and a writing tool. Got to get done. I think we meet Uncle Bill at this point.
Oh,
Uncle Bill is like crushingly depressing.
Yeah,
he is so sad.
So we learned some stuff about Mark. He actually dropped out of school. He dropped out of high school. He was in the army. I don't know if he finished his time in the army. I'm assuming he did, but more or less to like kind of straighten himself out. And they're like, it didn't really help. And like one of the things is he's kind of aggressive, and like you were saying, like he can just kind of command the room a little bit. Like he has that ability. But he also has no money. Like he said, he has no money. He has like no income whatsoever. Any money he has that from working goes to child support, I would assume.
Goes to child support, and he actually mentions his phone bill a couple of times.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Actually, that first time we see him going through his bills, he does mention that it's like, oh, I just borrowed gas money from my ma.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, like shit.
Yeah. So
like, you're house is not in order.
Yes, and then we meet Uncle Bill.
Yeah, Uncle Bill also needs to be described from a physical standpoint because he is a photographer's dream. Just like if you wanted to capture Middle America, I guess, like just take Uncle Bill out to a field or something.
I think if you just got him in his trailer, like if you just where his TV was, if you just stood back where that TV was and took a picture of him, you're like, wow.
Oh yeah, you could get some gorgeous photos of this guy.
Yeah,
he has lived a life. Sadly, we're introduced to him towards the end of it.
Very towards the end of it.
Yeah, he's like a skeletal figure. He's got like really bad posture. His skin is gray, and he's just unkempt, and he wants to die, as far as I can tell.
He is given up. He does not want to be around.
Yeah,
anymore.
his wife died at some point, and you can tell that was it for him.
Yeah.
Like as soon as she was gone, he just gave up. And it's really sad that we have to be introduced to this guy and see nothing of him but like him steeped in sadness. But he has some decent moments in this that are very human and heartfelt.
Yeah.
It's like they're few and far between, but it's like Uncle Bill seems like he was an interesting guy, and it's sad that he's dead.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's no spoiler alert. We find out that Uncle Bill, who I actually have an Uncle Bill, actually he just passed away. He was actually, I think, maybe a professor or a teacher. Like he was very articulate.
Scholar.
He was a scholar.
Yeah, is what his brother Mark's dad says.
He was very smart, very articulate. And when you meet him, you're just like, it's like. You would think that this guy has just been like drinking for the past 30 years and like he has no brain, like he has no like nothing going on up there anymore. But come to find out that he's just old. He's
just shut down.
Yeah,
like he's just given up. But what's interesting is I believe Mark's dad when he says he was a scholar, because he actually is like reciting poems and singing songs throughout the movie. And they're not bad. It's just his delivery of them is horrible, because there's no intent behind it. It's just words. I watched this movie with the subtitles on for the first time, and it's like, wow, if you wrote that down, that would be pretty good. But because it's coming out of his mouth, it's terrible.
It's very chilling, is what I found.
It is.
It's very chilling.
Well, almost all of them are just about him missing his wife.
And you could tell that Mark really looks up like. He looks up to him for a couple reasons. One, I think he looks up to him intellectually. I think that he admires him, and I think his dad even mentions that he's always admired him. The second thing is that Uncle Bill's got money.
Yeah, that first point I think is important because, as we'll learn in greater detail later on, Mark's home situation wasn't the best. Clearly, he and his dad are complete opposites when it comes to like ambition in life.
Yeah,
and so Bill being a scholar of some sort, like being a poet or a singer, of course Mark's going to look to him for inspiration because he's a fellow creative in a environment that doesn't nurture that particular. Yeah,
it is an environment that tries to suffocate that.
Absolutely, but that second point is why we're introduced to Uncle Bill when we are, and that's because Mark is trying to convince him to help finance the production of Northwestern.
Yeah.
And he does, in fact, succeed, I believe. But it's something that plays out over the course of the film. But I don't think Mark is a bad person. When you see him and Bill together, there's genuine love and appreciation there. Like, they have an interesting dynamic. They actually, funny enough, I mentioned Ed Wood earlier. The movie, not the actual person. But the Tim Burton movie, the way Ed Wood and Bela Lugosi's relationship plays out in that film is very similar to Mark and Uncle Bill, where it's like this young wide-eyed man with this old guy who's kind of at the end of his rope, and the young man does whatever he can to renew some of that spark.
And Mark,
and there's a lot of instances where Mark is hearing nothing but negativity come out of Bill, and he's just throwing nothing but positivity back at him, and they have this interplay that it's really neat to watch.
I thought it was, at first I'm like, borrowing money from relatives, not a good idea. But as you see their relationship kind of unfold like throughout the film, you're like, oh, like he's actually like he does need money. And he's also asking for somebody who can actually give him money. He's not asking somebody to put up their car for collateral or something like that. He's retired. He has quite a bit of money, and he's also like, you want to be a part of this. He's trying to include him in it. He tries to put him in the movie. He puts him in the movie, and he's actively trying to get him a part of the movie. But he's also trying to get money from him at the same time. And
at the same time, it's like you can't deny the fact that he is trying to squeeze some money out of a relative.
And I don't think that he has... I think he has complete intentions of paying it back. I don't see him just like trying to bleed people dry. He's not a sociopath. He's not just trying to borrow money. So. And like he's probably spending some of it on beer. Honestly, he's spending it on beer. But he's not like just spending it on beer. He's trying to get shit done. And we're not seeing like how much he's actually working, because I feel like he's somewhat supportive. His mom's somewhat supporting him, but he's also working, and we do see him working. They're not great jobs, and he's been delivering newspapers for 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, his brother mentions that, and again, that speaks to that not wanting to be one of them, kind of that mindset. It's like, I won't have a traditional 9 to 5. I'll do something else just to do something else.
I get it.
Funny enough, Mark tries to use photos of the lead actress that he wants to have in his film to convince Uncle Bill to give him money. Yeah. And Uncle Bill is receptive to that. And this is actually where we meet Tom Beach, the production manager, who we want to work on Northwestern, and he is a true fucking professional. He's very organized. He's talking shot lists. He's talking casting calls. Like he knows how to make a film. Yeah. And I think Dean is the one who expresses that sentiment of they're both filmmakers, but one has a more primeval understanding of the process and the other one's more textbook. And it was really interesting to see the two of them in the same room together, where you have this guy who has log books and like color coded shit, and where he's organized. He knows how to get this shit done. Then you have Mark, who's just like, yeah, whatever, man, we'll get it done. Excuse me while I take this beer and like crush it on my head. So at this point, we have our 4th production meeting for Northwestern, and we hit a bit of a speed bump in the fact that we have no money. So Mark very hurriedly decides to pivot away from Northwestern and then goes back to an old production, something that's been on his shelf for quite a while that he's been trying to finish, a film by the name of Colvin.
Which I support. I support this decision.
I understand his intent here. He's trying to keep busy, and he also has a financial motivation here. It's grossly ambitious. It's like wrong-headed in the extreme, but there is logic there. Basically, his idea is he wants to make the other film so he can finance Northwestern. Yeah. So he wants to take a half-finished product, take it to completion, get it sold, and then use that money, parlay that money into getting Northwestern done. Of course, the major caveat there is that you need to make money. Yeah. Like, there's no guarantee that you will. In fact, it's almost entirely certain that you won't.
I'm actually surprised Eraserhead doesn't come up at all. I just had a feeling that it was going to come up after watching this for a little bit. I'm like, he's going to talk about Eraserhead sometime. But
I would imagine he's familiar with David Lynch, because I haven't seen that many of David Lynch films, but as far as I understand, like horrible things hiding in plain sight in like typical American environments is like a theme in David Lynch's work. Mm-hmm. Like I forget what film it was, but basically like the opening shot is like suburbia, and then the camera keeps tilting down and it goes all the way into the earth, and there's like bugs and horrible like maggots and shit. Mm-hmm. So it's like this is suburbia, but it's rotten. And I could totally see Mark Borchardt identifying with that sentiment in some regard. But he has a pretty good quote here. He says, "I have absolutely no money. I have no hope of getting any money until Colvin is finished. Aesthetically, I'm not ready. The script is not ready. The casting hasn't even begun. The locations are scant at best. Are you crazy? That's 11 days from now." So basically, he's come to the realization that Northwestern's not going to happen. So let's do Coven. And this is around the time that we get some interviews with his family, and they talk about some stuff that you already mentioned, that he did a stint in the military. Didn't work out. And his brother believes that his main asset is his mouth.
Yeah.
And I don't argue that. Yeah. So we get an interview between, I think it's Mark and Mike Shank, and they're standing outside, and the documentary crew are just kind of filming them at, like, in front of like a junkyard or something. And there's this really cool moment where whoever's behind the camera at that moment asks, "What is Coven?" And without a moment's hesitation, Mark just spits out, 35-minute direct market thriller shot on 16mm black and white reversal. Yeah. And it's like, wow, you worked out your elevator pitch. like he just had it in the holster. I was like, damn, that's impressive. I should do that, because actually, like, the podcast meetup that I went to, like, somebody actually asked me, what's your elevator pitch? And I didn't have one, but I just, like, bullshit something. I didn't do bad, but I didn't do great. Oh, and the plot of Coven. Apparently, it's an alcoholic goes to a meeting, but the people there suck and are evil. And I was like, huh, Mark, have you ever done that? Are you speaking from the heart here?
I mean, it kind of sounds like the Invitation a little bit. Like you go into an AA meeting and it turns out like maybe you're in a cult or something like that. Spoiler alert. I haven't seen the Invitation. It was spoiled for me, so, fuck you guys too.
Well, again, that speaks to his mentality, where it's like it's not uncommon, especially for young folks, to look at, like, any institution as being, bullshit and made up of phonies and stuff. It's like any sort of order is wrong because I'm right. I have all the answers. But this is where he has his wonderful quote about, last night I was so drunk I was calling Morocco, man. I believed him too.
Yeah, was that? I thought he was referring back to a long time ago. But was that just?
I don't think so. I think that was the night before.
My goodness, buddy.
Yeah, he was so drunk he called Morocco and was trying to get a reservation at the Hilton. And then the best part of that quote, though, is that he's like, I think he just ends it with, "But that's what happens, man." Jeez. So anyway, yeah. I was like, yeah, that's normal. Fuck. So we get to see some footage of what we had of Coven at this point in time, and I think this is 1996 or something. Mm-hmm. And it's all black and white. It's actually aesthetically not. It's pleasing.
Yeah,
like, it looks decent.
He was onto something. Honestly, I think he was onto something. He might have had something decent here. Yeah,
and I actually should just go ahead and watch it, because I think it is like 35 minutes long, and I have the DVD, so I do technically own Coven. Unfortunately, I don't think any of the money went to Mark, but sorry.
That's unfortunate.
But I think he needs to sell like 4,500 copies of Coven on VHS to finance Northwestern. It's like, dude, you're not gonna do that.
No.
Like, it's like, if I was in the room, if I was his friend, even, it's like, dude, I don't know if that's a good idea.
I think that you can confidently sell 20, and you're topping out at about 200. Topping out at 200.
You're gonna get your friends and family, maybe a couple of people that are curious at the screening, which, as far as I understand, you only got one of. Like, it's not like getting a theatrical run; it's just getting a screening in a town.
Yeah.
Yeah. At this point, though, I think Mark actually gets Uncle Bill to front the bill.
Yeah.
He actually succeeds. Uncle Bill doesn't seem to beat up about it, but he's pretty apathetic. So
yeah, it's almost like he's taking advantage of it. It feels like he's taking advantage of a guy who doesn't really have much. He doesn't have much will to live. He's just like kind of
exactly.
like, if I
yeah.
He would honestly.
I'm gonna die. The money's gonna go somewhere anyway. Whatever.
Yeah, he's kind of like, he's reluctant. He's very reluctant, but he's kind of he's like, well, whatever. Like, what else? What else am I gonna do with it?
What's interesting is, like, the lady at the bank, like the person who actually works there. You can tell she's like aware of what's happening, and she's trying to give them like she's leading them with language, like how to actually get this done through the proper channels.
He's giving him the money, but he can't pull out the money without his permission.
Yeah.
So it's almost like having kind of like a joint checking, just like a $3,000 joint checking account that you can only pull out money if it's okay with Uncle Bill.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Which is yeah.
So what's kind of cute though here, well, not cute, but it's interesting, is on the ride home from the bank, Uncle Bill's fatalistic as always, but Dad of all people is actually kind of supportive of Mark. Like he's saying like Charles Lindbergh took chances, and it's like Columbus took a chance. You gotta have faith. It's like, so Dad is a man of faith. Dad typically shits on his son for trying to entertain his creative drive, but in this instance, I guess now that like there's a financial investment, now that there's actual stakes, I guess he's encouraging him, and this comes up more than once in the film where he's actively supporting him at this point, because he's recognizing the fact that it's an endeavor that's being made, and you can't just turn back from that. Like it's in your best interest as a person to just go through with it, even if it fails.
I think maybe the documentary crew are having a bit of an effect on this.
I think you're right. Like I said, if a camera's in the room, people tend to act different.
I think
I'm sure he would have been pretty unhappy with him if he didn't have a camera in the car with him.
I don't know the circumstances behind the documentary crew. I'm assuming that they read about him trying to get this movie together in the newspaper. It's been going on for I think he's got a couple of articles in the local paper about him. Mm-hmm. So they're like, oh, well, let's see if we can do a documentary about him, and probably helping him get financing from Uncle Bill.
No, apparently, I checked his Wikipedia, and apparently he has a fellowship at one of the colleges in his town or something.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, he's a fixture in that particular neighborhood or wherever. So now we actually go out and try to do some filming, and this was one of the more interesting scenes in the whole movie. So the night before, good job, Mark. We're making phone calls to everyone in the phone book, like everybody he knows, trying to ask, do you have 2 hours to film tomorrow? It's like, dude, you don't do that. Like you can't give someone 6 hours notice to go out filming. Everybody's gonna say no to that. But he apparently got together a decent group of people. I don't think Mom goes on this trip, but he's definitely got her on on deck to head out into the woods. So we're in Wisconsin, so there's snow everywhere, and we're wearing our black cultist robes, and there's about 8 people, and we march off into the woods with a 16mm camera with a wooden tripod attached to it. So I guess we're trying to pick up where we left off from the filming of COVID. And what's really interesting here is we finally get to see Mark's behavior on the set. We finally get to see what he's like as a director. And he's all over the place. We arrive where we're planning on filming in the woods. He's pointing at all sorts of things in the environment, saying, oh yeah, we're going to have to get somebody to climb a tree and knock some snow off of there. It's like, what? What are you talking about? It's like, I know that's a thing you do in filmmaking, but it's look at the resources you have at your command. Think about how much time you have. Work with what you got. Yeah. It's focus on the big picture for now. If you in a different situation, yes, absolutely, be detailed, focus on the minutia. But with 8 people that you just cobbled together on the fly with only a few hours in the fucking snow, yeah. Maybe just focus on getting it done. But he's running around doing everything. He's running the camera, he's trying to direct the actors, he has a light meter, he's mumbling to himself about f-stops and everything. And there's a couple of shots where he's trying to direct the action while he's the principal in focus of the shot. He's doing the whole fucking thing himself, and you can tell he knows what he's trying to do, but he is such a poor communicator that he just doesn't seem to have a clue how to direct the action. And it was really revealing. And I think this also like speaks to his mentality, where he's almost kind of like used to being surrounded by children in some regards. Like, in fact, the dynamic between him and his actors when he's filming is very similar to him and his kids.
Yeah, I did notice that.
Where it's like he's used to not necessarily talking down to people, but talking to people about things, about concepts that they have no understanding of. And it might be like everybody needs their win. I use that phrase every once in a while, and I think this might be how he gets his win. It's like in this particular arena of life, in the film world, he's used to being the only guy in the room who knows anything. And it probably feels pretty good to be like the smartest guy in the room every time one of these subjects comes up. And I think we are introduced to Joan, Mark's girlfriend.
I didn't even realize she was the girlfriend until much later into the film. Like, oh shit, they're dating.
She looked like his mom or something, but it's like, no, I already met his mom. Like,
I mean, for him, she's not bad looking at all. She looks a little bit older. She's not bad looking.
She does look a little bit older, but she has that like mom way about her, where it looks like she'd take good care of him, and she does seem to give a shit about him, and she believes in him, which it's pretty evident that that's why she's with him, is that because he has that silver tongue, because he is a creative guy in an uncreative environment. Yeah, he stands out, and she believes in his ambition. In fact, I think she says at some point, like, if he can do 25% of what he says he's planning on doing, then he'll have succeeded in my eyes. And then we meet the kids, and yeah, like you said, I kind of screwed the pooch with this one, because this was quite the reveal, where it's like, oh shit, he's got way more to worry about than I thought.
I'm like, holy shit, he has a kid. Holy shit, he has 3 kids. You have got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
Up to this point, like, you're just watching this and you're like, man, this guy, he's just single dude living with mom, just scraping it together, trying to get this movie together. He's got responsibilities, and I'm like, how is he doing this? How is he getting anything done?
I'm actually amazed, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, how is he surviving? Like, how have these kids not starved to death? But yeah, there are 3 of them. Was it a boy and 2 girls?
Something like that.
And we're introduced to them in like the most 90s way possible. It's depressing as all hell. They're like in the kitchen eating fucking McDonald's off of plates.
Those chicken McNuggets look good, bro. I wanted some chicken nuggets.
They did, but it was like, man, this, like, if you wanted to give like an honest representation of America at that point in time, it's like, yep, that'd be it.
Aesthetically, this feels like the 80s. Like, everything.
A little bit, yeah.
Everything felt like the 80s in here.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Aesthetically, this movie is kind of a fun time capsule.
It is.
It does capture an interesting moment in time that both you and I have memories of, and so like the more time we put between now and then it's going to make it more precious.
Mm-hmm.
But we are now in the summer of 1996, and this is where we get to see Bill in his natural environment, in his trailer, which we already talked about a little bit. But he lives in squalor. Again, though, if you wanted like a beautiful photography subject, just him in his native habitat would be amazing. And this is also where Mark expresses that he imparts to Uncle Bill that it's like, if we can sell X number of VHS tapes, we can make a profit. And Bill is just kind of like, whatever. Like, Bill agrees with the audience.
Bill doesn't have the heart to tell him that he's never gonna make it. Is basically what Bill. It's at the tip of his tongue when he's there. He just doesn't have the heart to tell him, like, listen, you're spinning your wheels. This is never gonna amount to anything. But he just never does.
He does it in a roundabout fashion, but the very end of this movie, I think, is his way of expressing that.
Yeah.
It's in a completely roundabout fashion. It's borderline incoherent, but I think that's what he was getting at. But at this point, though, we get to maybe the most enjoyable scene in the film.
Head the board.
Head the board. Hitting the board. So we're filming Colvin, and we're barbecuing outside while we're filming inside. And we get to see all the actors show up, like the thespians. So the thespian shows up. The one gal that I'm trying to think of a nickname for her, but she's wearing she's got the short midriff bearing T-shirt. And,
she's fine.
Like,
she
is fine, and there's a reason she's on the flyer, and there's a reason why when we're doing the photo shoot later, Mark's like, "How are you framing her? Are you getting here? Are you getting here? Are you getting here?" And it's like, I see what you're going for.
Yeah.
That'll sell. That'll move product. But we get this just a couple second clip of Ken Keane talking with her. He's like, "How you doing?"
Yeah, how you doing?
Like, you're looking good. I was like, "Way to go, Ken."
Yeah, right.
But yeah, we're filming a scene that Tom Schimmels. We get to see him outside. I guess prior to filming, he's sitting out by his car, and he's like, "Shot 37." So this was a scene that we actually tried to do a while ago, like a year or two ago, and this was like the one scene in the whole fucking movie that really hoped we got in the can. Like I hoped we got it right the first time, but apparently we need to reshoot it, and that would be the head and the board as you framed it. So we get to see the actors in, I think it's like a kitchen or something. I'm not sure whose house this is, to be honest. But Mark, basically the scene is Mark is seated at a table. Tom is supposed to come up behind him and put his hands on his shoulders, and then Mark gets into a scuffle with him, and it ends with Mark putting Tom on the floor, who posts up on all fours, and then Mark pushes his head through a cupboard. There are some logistics involved in having a man put his head through a cupboard door that apparently we failed to take into consideration.
Yeah, they use a real board. He's like, yeah, kind of just put some. I forgot what word he uses. He basically makes it so that it breaks easier.
It's scores.
He puts scores in it. They are not very good.
No, just at a cursory glance, it's like, no, that's not gonna do nothing. So this is a solidly constructed cupboard door, as we'll see, because
it's basically like just throwing somebody's head through a normal cupboard door.
Yes. And so we get to see multiple takes of Mr. Tom Schimmels slamming the top of the weakest part of your skull. It's like the top of his head into this cupboard door. And you just hear these sickening, thump, thump, thump. And it's not going. It is not going. And they do multiple hits per take. I don't know how many times his head impacted this cupboard, but yeah, he probably has some CTE at this point. So the solution to this problem, though, is Mark actually sits down and tries to punch the cupboard door, and I think he cuts his knuckles on it.
Yeah, he does.
He's like, "Oh man, I'm sorry you tried to put your head through that. That's pretty fucking solid, man." So they rescore it, and finally they get it to work. We get some pretty fun blood effects here, where Tom's crumpled on the floor and he's got blood pouring out of his head. And we get to hear Mark deliver some direction here. He's like, "Fingers twitching, please."
Yeah, I like that. That was funny.
Nerves twitching, please. That was pretty cute, because you can tell that that's the shit he likes. In fact, I forget. It may be a little later in the documentary, but basically he's asked what films inspired you. Yeah, and again, without skipping a beat, it's like Dawn of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead, Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
He picks two independent horror films. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original, is awesome. I love that. It's really great. I've seen Night of the Living Dead. Not crazy about it, but I get why he'd really like it. And I still have not seen the original Dawn of the Dead because I have to buy it on Blu-ray for $50 in order to watch it.
Yeah, we've gone over that before. That apparently the distribution rights to that film are in limbo or something. Because there's a lot of printings of that movie that are suddenly very rare.
Yeah, I'm once I have the money to just pull the trigger and buy it on Blu-ray, I'll get it. But I'm just not there. I'm not in that part of my life where I can blindly spend the money on Dawn of the Dead Blu-ray.
I bet you the supplements for that would be really great, because as far as I know, Romero was a very open guy when it came to talking about the making of his films, and there are some stories about the making of that one in particular that are really fun.
Was it Screaming Mad George, or was it who did the makeup effects for that?
Tom Savini.
Savini, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, it's one of the big ones. It's one of the big names I knew. I just wasn't sure which one it was.
Yeah.
I think, did Screaming Mad George work on that at all as an assistant of some kind? I feel like he did, but
I don't think he worked on that one. I don't know which set he worked on, but I know Greg Nicotero joined up with Savini at some point, but that may have been later, like firmly into the 80s. Anyway,
sorry,
we could talk about that shit all day.
Did you catch the little kid when he's talking to his kids? The one kid says, "It's like apocalypse now." I'm like, "Whoa, what?"
Oh yeah, the documentary crew asked the kids, asked Mark's kids, what movies has your dad had you watch? And they're like, "Apocalypse Now."
I'm like, dude, you can't have your kids watch Apocalypse Now.
Yeah, the horror. The horror. Yeah, no, he's seen the fucking movie probably many times.
That's bad if you remember. If that's what.
That's parenting.
Because you know what scene leads up to the horror
is the slaughter of an actual animal.
Yeah.
At this point, we finally, and this was very important, I'm sure, to anybody seeing this movie for the first time, we finally addressed the pronunciation of Colvin. So there's just this random scene of Mark and the thespian, whose name, I was right, it is Robert Richard Jorge. Man, this guy is true acting professional.
He says later in the film, "I'll take off the scarf." That should let you know who we're talking about.
Yeah, no, he cannot be anything but an actor.
He's done a Shakespeare camp before.
A few. But they're sitting together in like it looks like a recording booth of some sort. There's like a piano in the room, and the documentary crew ask from behind the camera, like, they're asking about the name Coven, and Robert very plainly says it's Coven, and Mark's like, "No way, man. Coven would be like oven. That's just wrong, man. It's totally Coven. It's totally Coven." I'm like, fuck. That's kind of perfect.
I think it's his accent.
I don't think so. I think it's just his misunderstanding of the English language.
I can see that.
But yeah, so he insists that his film is called Colvin, and I to this day will, forever call it that. It's not Coven. It is Colvin. And then we get to see Mark at the cemetery, and this is like one of his jobs. He's like a caretaker at a cemetery. And he delivers a lot of speeches here about, like, here everyone is equal, and he feels like a sense of like profound comfort from this environment. Like, and I think it's just like he feels ostracized from his own dwellings. Like, he doesn't feel like he belongs here. So like being among the dead, it's like more comforting than trying to blend in and like get along with like his dad and other like-minded individuals. But this is not the only time he delivers a speech like this. And this is also where he makes mention of like the frontier and how drinking and being rebellious and stuff like that, that's like kind of his ideal. Like I think he phrases it as being like a teenager with a camera and a beer, like one in each hand. That's like the happiest times of his life, I guess. And he was well aware of the fact that everyone around him was disapproving of that, but that's his happy place, apparently. By the way, we also get a clip of The More the Scarier 4, and what's really cute is in parentheses at the bottom of the screen it says unfinished.
Yeah, we know.
Yeah, Mark, we know that.
We know.
He also made a film called I Blow Up from 1982 that's basically him just dumping Kool-Aid over his head and like, I don't know, having a seizure. I made shit like that. And this is also where we learn a bit more about Mom and Dad. And I think we got this from interviews with his brothers, where like mom is a Swedish gal, complete with accent. Mom and dad are divorced, and the few interviews we have with dad, he is uptight and guarded as all hell. Like he's very political with all of his answers in front of the camera, to the extent that we only get a couple of clips of him, because any sort of at all personal questions, he seems like he just says, nah, we're not doing that. But it's pretty clear that the living situation at home when Mark was young was not great. All the brothers confirm this. They all say that like it was a pretty awful living situation, a lot of shouting, it was a pretty violent environment, and mom and dad clearly didn't belong together. And the one brother does make mention of the fact that he thinks that the filming and like the imagination and stuff were kind of how Mark got away from all that. Like he withdrew from the family basically. Then we get to see Mike Shank do some scratch tickets.
Oh yeah. He says I spent $10 a day for the past week on scratch off tickets. So
oh man, you gotta work on your Mike Shank.
Hey man, I had very little time to prepare.
What? I have $10 a day on scratch tickets. Mark, I won some money at the convenience store.
Well, he comes in at one point. He comes in happy because he won like $50. He's like, I don't want to tell him because they're gonna try to get me to give him the money.
Yeah, that was depressing. It's like he's not wrong either. Like,
no, we get to find out like how much Mark goes through his bills, like exactly what he's looking at. He owes $10,000 to his dad, $3,600 in child support. I'm assuming $3,600 is just for that month because he's got 3 fucking kids. $1,500 to the IRS, another $500, another $300, another $50. There was one in there I didn't even hit. There was like another $200. It's ridiculous how far in debt he is.
Yeah, I don't know how he keeps his head above water. That's a big mystery. But at some point, Mike tells us the tale of how he became friends with Mark.
The vodka story is so sad.
Yeah, he's like, I used to party a lot, and I like to drink a lot of vodka. And yeah, Mark came over, and he had a big bottle of vodka, and we drank it together. And then we used to get together a lot and drank vodka together.
And that's the whole.
Like, so that's the entire foundation of your relationship to Mark, is you guys drank a lot.
Midwest High School, man. That's what a lot of us had in common with each other.
I guess, but it is. I'm sure there's more details to it, but like the way he tells the story, it's like, is there gonna be anything to this, or is it just you guys drank vodka together and then decided you were friends?
That's pretty much how those bonds are created.
Yeah.
Well,
we get to see.
I had those same bonds, but I'm not really friends with those people anymore. So they just, unfortunately, they have those.
Yeah. I don't have any of those bonds, but I've witnessed those bonds being formed, and there's a reason why I stayed away.
Yeah, smart.
Smart, wicked smart. So we get to see Mark have him help. He has like his son help him do a little bit of filming, and it's kind of a cute moment where it's like, oh, he's trying to get some work done, but he's also trying to, not neglect his parenting duties at the same time.
Yeah.
So like he's like in a cramped office trying to do some shit, but he has all of his kids around him.
Yeah.
Like he's with them, and you can tell that he does care about them. And the way he talks to his son in particular, I like that he like shook his hand and he was like, "You did good, son." And I was like, wow. Like, I'm sure his son felt pretty good in that moment. But we also get to see Mark kind of depressed, where he's talking about this gal Alyssa, who we only see from the back in like one shot in this entire documentary. Apparently she didn't sign the release or whatever to be on camera. But he has these 3 kids by this woman Alyssa, and apparently she like wanted him to marry her or something, and they've been on a break for like 3 years or something while she's with some other guy. It's very strange situation, but at this point she's also talking about taking the kids away, so Mark's a little freaked out.
Yeah, he's a little. They have an argument outside the house. Is this before or after Thanksgiving? Is this before Thanksgiving?
That would be after.
Oh,
At this point in the documentary, we are pre-Thanksgiving, but that conversation happens post-Thanksgiving.
Forgot to mention that we're splicing in retro shots of the Packers leading up to their Super Bowl this year, which I thought about for a little bit. I'm like, they're kind of throwing. I'm like, it kind of matters at one point, but like, this is also a distraction, keeping him from like getting shit done, because that's also a reason. Like, Packer, your home team are doing good. I know from experience that football and beer go together like peanut butter and chocolate. Like, that's what he's also doing in his spare time, is he's seen watching football several times throughout the film.
He's seen watching football, but his attitude towards it is very revealing in regards to his character, and we'll get to that for sure. But it needs to be said, when he's talking about his kids being taken away, he does throw the phrase out there, "I don't want to end up being a nothing."
Mm-hmm.
So you can tell he does have a little bit of a realistic viewpoint buried deep down. Like, he does understand that, holy shit, my situation kind of sucks. But yeah, now we're at Thanksgiving, and before the festivities, Mark invites Uncle Bill over, and Bill sings us a song and a poem, and it's kind of incoherent. It's difficult to figure out, but it's really depressing stuff about his wife having died. And someone from behind the camera, one of the documentary folks, actually asked, like, what are these? Because he has like notebooks strewn about in his trailer and stuff. And Uncle Bill like pauses for a second. He says, "Well, this is what happened to me." And it didn't hit until this time I watched it, but I was like, oh, he's just telling it like it is. In fact, like, at some point he's like mourning the loss of his wife, and like saying, like, you chose to leave, as in, I'm guessing she wanted to die or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty sad fucking shit.
It's really sad.
Yeah, Bill wants a peppermint schnapps with Sprite. Is that a good drink, Kyle?
He doesn't want a peppermint schnapps and Sprite. He's offered schnapps from Mark, who later says, no, he wanted it himself. He waits for his mom to leave, and as soon as mom shuts that door, he's like, "Will you want some schnapps?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I think Bill might have he's probably not allowed to drink. He doesn't seem to drive. I don't think anybody brings him. They might bring him food and stuff. He might have. I think Mark probably goes to the grocery store for him, but he doesn't buy him booze. So he lights up when he's like, "Yeah, I'd like some schnapps." He gets schnapps and Sprite with. He's like, "I want a couple glugs and some ice in there." I'm like, that sounds fucking disgusting.
I don't drink at all. I have no concept in my mind of what peppermint or schnapps taste like.
But peppermint schnapps. Let me put it to you this way: take a peppermint patty without the chocolate. Mm-hmm. Think that intense peppermint flavor, even like just an Altoid. That intense peppermint flavor. That's what peppermint schnapps is. And it'll fuck you up because it's 50%. Like it's stronger than most normal liquors. It's strong. Ooh. And he's mixing it with Sprite, which is gotta be disgusting. I don't know
why would you pick Sprite.
Some people just
answer me that.
Some people have their combinations that they like, and he might not like caffeine. Like people are like, oh, let me get a rum and Coke. Well, you don't really want the caffeine. Sprite doesn't have any caffeine. Maybe that's what it is. He just stays away from caffeine. That's the only thing I could think of. Why not root beer? Peppermint schnapps and root beer? I'd get that. I'd understand that. Hell, I'd order that just to try it.
Without having a clue what it would taste like, just writing that phrase out on paper, peppermint schnapps with Sprite, just disgusts me.
Well, we found out there's a liquor called Southern Comfort, which is, I think it's technically a peach brandy. It's a distilled peach wine. And we mix it with Mountain Dew, and it makes bubble gum. It makes a bubblegum flavor. It's really, I haven't had it since I was probably 18. But maybe peppermint schnapps and Sprite make some weird drink. I don't know. It might have a weird, interesting flavor.
Well, whenever you graduate from whatever you graduate from, maybe have that as like a celebration. Do it for me. I want to know.
I'll try that once I get accepted to the place I want to be accepted to.
There you go. So Mark actually does a sweet thing, and he bathes Uncle Bill.
Yeah.
Like he gives him like a sponge bath or something. Like, I'm trying.
I don't think Uncle Bill bathes himself very often, and yeah, I
don't think so.
That was
But
really
it was
really sweet.
it was sweet. It was sweet watching the two of them, and like Mark is having a laugh at like Bill's toenail. He's like, "Oh man, that's a science photo."
Yeah, science photo.
And then he does his laundry, and he does grumble a bit about having to do the laundry, so maybe he isn't as sweet as he lets on, but what we got on film was very sweet.
Yeah.
So at this point, Joan shows up at the house, and Mike and Ken Keene also come by, and we're cooking a turkey and everything. It's Thanksgiving, obviously.
It's a nice Friendsgiving.
It is. It's a good Friendsgiving. And Mark is clearly a bit drunk already. But I think you mentioned off air, I think he drinks more than we actually see.
I think that, yes. He's visibly, you can definitely tell in this scene that he's way more drunk. And I think he drinks beer often. There's a big difference between drinking beer and drinking liquor, and I think he might have gotten into the schnapps for this particular scene, and he didn't tell his family, and I think that's why he's acting out a bit more. I think he probably just coasts on beer. But I think that's just...
I think you're right. He's just perpetually at he's just a little foggy all day long, basically.
He's not getting good sleep most of the time. I wanted to mention, we talked about it before we started recording, there was a moment in here when it kind of just... I'm like, yeah, I think he's a kind of a functioning alcoholic. He's down in the basement, and there's like some kind of the darker, like, there's some like intense moments in the basement. There
are several.
And this was one of them. He goes down to the basement, and I don't know why they picked the basement to do this, but it's interesting that they chose the basement to do this. He goes downstairs and he's like talking to the camera, and then a beer comes into frame, and he takes a good guzzle, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm getting you like a really good costume down here." And I think he's sneaking it, which is definitely alcoholic behavior. I don't think he's really supposed to be drinking that much. And he might have, and I know from experience that generally if somebody's not doing so well financially and they have a drinking problem, mom taking them in, they're like, you can't be drinking. Like, you just can't be doing it. And I think he might have, for the Super Bowl, had a like, oh, come on, it's the Super Bowl, or it was Thanksgiving, let me have a few. No, it was the Super Bowl is when he was tying one off. I'm sorry, I'm getting the 2 days mixed up. I apologize.
Yeah, actually there's 3 days here.
Yeah.
Forgot to mention it when we were filming the head and the board. Tom Schimmel's smashing his head through the cupboard door. That's when we got to see him have his like heart-to-heart with the camera in the basement. So basically, he's whispering directly to the camera, to the documentary crew, about how he has like 50. He's got like 6 hours and 50 shots to do. So he's under a lot of stress, and he's supposed to be looking for blankets. That's why he's in the basement. He's supposed to be looking for blankets to cover up the camera noise, because it's an old camera and it makes whirring noises. But while he's doing that, like you said, a beer just like floats up into the frame, and he takes a big swig, and then he yells up the stairs to like say, "Yeah, I found some good blankets down here." It's like, so I don't think the documentary crew took him down there.
Interesting.
In any of
but
these
there's
instances.
a couple.
I think you're right. I think he did go down to the basement because he needed a moment, because he was under a lot of pressure and he was freaking out. And there's a camera there. I may as well talk to it to get this shit off my mind.
We don't really get anything about like the clash between I feel like the clash between somebody who sees himself as a director and then somebody who's actually shooting a documentary. And I don't know, we don't get any like tension between the two of them. If there was, there might have been. They might have just decided to leave that out. He's like we're going to get a shot of you doing this, and you don't see Mark like, "Oh, why don't I come this way?" Like trying to give him notes or something like that. And
that would have been really, really interesting, because that's actually one of the things that makes this film interesting, is that it's a documentary made by a professional film crew filming a slightly inept filmmaker.
Yeah.
And it does beg the question, like, you have competent people surrounding you at the moment. They're probably not supposed to be helping you, but they probably can.
Yeah. And I wonder if he picked their brains at all, or like at least he probably didn't think about it.
I don't know, but at the same time, it's like what we know about this guy through watching this documentary. It makes me think he probably wouldn't. Like he would be too prideful. He's
Yeah.
like, oh no, man, I'm not gonna do what those college kids would do.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna do it my own way, like the way the Cowboys would do it. Like,
And also
it's that I don't want to be one of them mentality.
Or even
I've seen it far too many times.
the style of documentary is completely different than shooting a film.
It is, but at the same time, like from a technical standpoint, they know how to make a film.
Yeah,
They're right there. But yeah, we're getting ready for Thanksgiving dinner. We're eating it. It's pretty fucking awful watching them eat in this tiny kitchen.
Yeah.
And everything. It's the 90s, so all the food looks disgusting. I don't know what it is about like that grain of film, but it just makes everything look
Not
nasty.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks unappetizing. But this is where Mike Shank mentions that I won $50 off of scratch tickets today, but I don't want to tell anybody because Mark will probably want to borrow it, and that was very sad. But
he does mention it,
sharing,
and
Mike.
he doesn't ask him on camera to borrow it, but he does mention it eventually.
This is also where we get another one of those scenes in the basement where Mark is talking direct camera, and it ends like really dark.
Yeah.
Like he's having a heart-to-heart with the camera, and he doesn't end with any words. As far as I remember, he just like pulls up a piece of turkey and just eats it in front of the camera.
Well,
yeah, it's like, whoa.
He almost sounded like
went to a place.
He was getting defensive. Like he asked him, like, "What do you think about what do you think about it? What, like, you're so almost like, oh, you're so great. You're a documentary filmmaker. What do you think about my film?"
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if more was said after they cut from that, because he did have a confrontational look about him in that moment.
Yeah.
So we cut to the next day, and Mark is ragging on Mike for ripping off Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
And they go back and forth. He's like, Mike, you totally ripped off Black Sabbath. You changed one note. You changed one word. And like, I don't know if either one of them is in the right with their particular arguments, but it's cute. And Mark confesses on camera with his, I think it's his son, like asleep on the couch with him, that he was like really depressed for the past week. And he does mention though that like having Mike here with him in this moment like really helps him a lot. Like it helps his mental health. It makes him happy. And they go back and forth, him and Mike, just talking about what they're thankful for. And Mike is thankful for money and food, and Mark is mostly thankful for Mike. And I was like, they have a good friendship.
Mike has a good energy. He seems like a sweet guy. He seems genuine.
He does seem like a very sweet guy, and clearly he's a good friend to Mark. I don't know if any of that rubs off on Mark, but clearly they do something for each other.
Yeah.
And now we're in winter of 1996, and Mark is like huddled up in front of the TV watching footage of Northwestern, which again is not completed. And he's asked, "Why didn't you finish it?" And I can't remember the exact quote, but what I wrote down was like if you actually go ahead and do it and complete it, then there's actual consequences to it.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's like story of his life, I think.
That should be that should be like the film, like the tag, like the one of the quotes from the film is like, yeah, he's afraid. He's afraid to finish it. He's afraid to have it.
I think, yeah.
He doesn't want it to be. He's insecure about it, and he's afraid once it's finished, like all of his insecurities are just gonna be poked and like pointed out throughout the film. I would say. It makes sense.
It's like a and then what type situation.
Yeah.
Where it's like, then I got to go back to normal life. That's just crazy, man. Like so much of his decision making seems to be surrounded by that idea of just not wanting to end up in a factory.
Yeah.
Just not wanting to be like everyone else.
I can't blame him. I worked in 2 of them when I was 18, and I completely get what he's doing.
I never did factory work, but I did work in a warehouse and a thrift store, and it taught me quite a bit about life.
Yes.
So now we finally get to Mom. We're filming pickups with Mom. So these are like additional shots that needed to be done for the head in the board scene.
Yeah.
This was so frustrating to watch.
It was
making me uncomfortable, man.
I felt so bad for him. I'm like, he really is trying. Like, he's really trying to get this done. And his poor mom. There's miscommunication. There's a little bit of a language barrier. And he's just trying so hard to get this shot done. And it's frustrating. And you could just see he's just like...
Oh, yeah. The way this scene is edited is beautiful.
Yeah.
Because what we get is she's running the camera. Again, 16mm camera covered in blankets to cover the noise. And she's just trying to get a simple shot of Mark hunched over, panting, and then ducking out of frame. And again, like you said, the communication difficulties are just profoundly frustrating.
Yeah.
But the way this scene is edited, we get to see shots from the documentary crew from their perspective, but then we actually splice in footage directly from the camera that she's handling. So like Mark's 16mm footage. And to see him in the center of the frame, like closing his eyes and just like biting his lip and trying not to explode on his mom, like it's good. It's good drama, good juicy drama, but holy shit, it's uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable.
So immediately after this, and I don't know if this actually happened the same day. For the love of God, I hope not. But Alyssa shows up, and they have a shouting match at the car out in the front lawn with the kids present. There are a lot of F-bombs being tossed around. And apparently what happened was, like, Joan, Mark's girlfriend, came to the house. Alyssa was there. They got into it. Joan left, apparently in a huff. And Alyssa and Mark got into a shouting match in front of their kids. And holy shit. It's just a fuck, man. So Mark is now in a car by himself, and he's doing the last shot of Coven, and it's this really profound moment where he's like alone in a car, winding a Bolex, a camera, and he's like, just, I think he's broken down to the point that he just doesn't care anymore. Like, he's very apathetic in this moment. He's just like getting it done. And it's really fitting that like the end of this filming journey is him alone in a car.
Yeah.
And it's really sad, but I guess at this point he believes that Joan left him. She comes back later, but in this moment he believes that like he has nothing, and he says, as Joni put it, now you've got nothing. And Mom comes out to like take a still shot of him in the car, like a production photo or something, and he's just like slouched in the back seat, and it's, oh man, it's rough. And then we get an interview with Mom that's like really heavy stuff. Like, again, I guess this is like the dark part of the film. She says like he lives for movies, always movies. And then they ask her like, is he ever gonna like succeed in making that big movie that he dreams about? And she pauses and she takes a good long moment. She says, I don't think so.
No. And
you can tell that she really had to like fight that. Like, she did not want to say that on camera, but she had to. She was like, yeah, honestly, I don't think so. Then we get to do some ADR, and it's Robert the Thespian. He's like in the living room, just like speaking his dialogue in his very stagey way, and we get this really cute shot of like Mark and his family sitting in the kitchen, and like you can hear all the actors in the living room like just through the door, like screaming these insane ramblings and stuff, and all the kids are around. It's like, again, parenting. And now we get to the editing stage of the film, because Mark, you know, he finished the filming of Coven in the backseat of his car. Now he's using the facilities at the University of Milwaukee to do editing on his 16mm film. And holy shit, this is a process. He's taken his kids into the editing bay, and they're sleeping on the floor in sleeping bags. I mean, good job being a dad, taking your kids to work, but like, damn, that's putting in hours and then some. We get to see Mark at the cemetery again. We get to see the funny image of him with a ponytail and a dress shirt vacuuming.
Yeah.
I don't know why that made me laugh, but just the sight of him like that made me laugh.
Well, he's vacuuming, and it's clear that he's just not very bright, because he's vacuuming and he's just. I've had to do a lot of vacuuming before, and he's just running right into the cord, and then he turns around and he's running right back into the cord again. I'm like, dude, this isn't rocket science. Like,
yeah,
it's the shot is. It's kind of sad when you see it, because it's like they're putting in him like doing work, which you do, but just those little details, you're like, man, he's just not with it.
Well, and also he gets like the cord caught on some flowers
Yeah.
that are belong to a dead person.
Yeah.
And he just like yanks the cord off of it. And then he goes home and he pays Joan a visit, who got a haircut. Her hair became even more 90s. She looks like a lot of grade school teachers I had. And he gives her a garbage bag full of flowers that he stole from the cemetery.
Yeah. He stole flowers from the cemetery.
Yeah, and thankfully she seems to be in on the joke. Like, she knows where they came from, and they have a laugh over it. But they go. Mark seems like he's just like living in the editing suite at this point, and we get a cute moment with his kid where they're laying down in their sleeping bags, and he's like, "Did you just swear, man?" Because like he thinks his daughter said shit for the first time.
But he's not sure. He's like, I don't care.
He's not sure. Yeah. It's a funny parenting moment where he's like, I don't care, man. I just want to make sure I'm not getting senile or something.
I'm not hearing things, you know?
Yeah.
Then we have to go get some ADR for Uncle Bill. But before that, we get Mark picking up Mike, because Mike is going to help him. And Mike says to him, my mom packed us a lunch. And this mom goes into the Mom Hall of Fame. He's like, what'd she pack us? He's like, Polish sausage, cheese and crackers. And then we find out what else she packed in there. Trevor, did you see what soda Mike hands Uncle Bill in the trailer?
How could I forget?
Oh my God. It's so beautiful.
Yeah. So Bill demands nourishment.
Yes.
He needs sustenance before he can deliver his lines on the microphone. So Mike Shank is kind enough to share some cheese and crackers with him, and then he pulls out a bright green can of Surge.
Motherfucking Surge. The best soft drink ever. Yeah.
And it's amazing, too, because I remember the first time I had Surge. Some fella from Montana brought it, and I was like, oh, this is amazing.
I think that's why I'm short now, was because of Surge. But I saw the can, and I legit had a physiological reaction. I saw it, and I got excited. I'm like, oh, man. I remember seeing that can. It was brilliant marketing. It was the greatest. It was a good soda. Shout out to Surge. I'm
just once it hits your lips.
I saw it. I guess they still sell it, but they brought it back. But I was at my family's house in Indiana, and we went to the store to go grab something. And we were in like where my great grandparents live, and this was like a really small like grocery store, convenience store. And they had Surge in there, and I'm like, oh, I want to get it. I want to get a 6-pack of Surge. But I'm like, wait. Is this new Surge, or is this Surge from the 90s?
Has that Surge been there since 1996?
And I'm like, and I'm only going to drink half of it. I don't drink soda anymore. So I'm like, I'm going to drink half of it and just have a 6-pack. I'm like, no, don't waste your money. I'll do it again one day.
Oh, you should have bought it and just like stretched it out.
But I can only drink, I can't drink a whole soda.
No, that's what I mean. It's just like you share it with somebody. You stretch it.
I'll do it next time.
You can have Surge in your house for a long time.
It's probably so sugary that I can't even drink it now, I would assume.
Just your teeth would just melt instantly.
Ow! No, it's hurting my teeth.
So this scene is one of the more memorable ones in the entire documentary. This is it's all right, it's okay, there's something to live for, Jesus told me so.
Poor Bill.
Scene.
He wants,
this scene, man. So we do 30 takes.
31 takes of Uncle
Bill sitting in a car And did you note the blue tarp?
Yes, I did.
on-
I
on his
definitely
seat?
noted that. Yes.
Have you ever seen that before?
No, I think
Is-
the reason why I thought about it too. I'm like, it's probably just a shitty car. Also, he's trying to get the elements. I think it's kind of raining out, and I think he probably was like, we're gonna have the window down. We don't want it to ruin the seat, so let's put a tarp down. I'm hoping
okay.
that's why it's there.
I hope so. I feel like that was just a fixture in his car, though. That he sits with a tarp at his back for some reason.
Maybe
he gets.
my downstairs neighbor has kind of a weird car situation going on. I wouldn't be surprised if the tarp is just there. It's just kind of part of the car now.
Maybe he gets like savage back sweats or something. I mean,
I'm feeling that right now, man. Ugh.
yeah, I believe it. But yeah, we do 31 takes with Uncle Bill, and he's supposed to say this line. It's all right. It's okay. There's something to live for. Jesus told me so. There are layers to this scene.
Yeah.
So Uncle Bill is not an actor.
No.
He can barely speak. Like his speech is stilted, and he has mutton mouth for sure. But the reason I say there are layers to the scene is because you are asking a man who is at the end of his rope, who does not care about living any longer, to say this line. Again, he's not an actor, so you're asking him to speak an untruth. It's like you're asking him to express himself and lie, basically, because he doesn't believe that. Clearly, he doesn't believe that. And yeah, his delivery is awful. And eventually, Uncle Bill just says, "I'm not doing this anymore. We're done."
31 takes. I don't blame him.
And yeah, no, that's a lot to ask from a very old man
Who clearly does not want to do this.
And he's bundled up. You can tell it's cold out too.
Yeah. Got old bones.
But you can tell
and shit.
at the same time though, it's like Mark could have asked anyone else to do this.
Yeah.
So I think it meant something to him to
Yeah.
have Uncle Bill do this. So you can tell Mark is unhappy with what he got. We do see that clip in the finished film, and it's very badly edited.
I mean, it's not as bad as Weekend at Bernie's, man. I've seen bad ADR. Weekend at Bernie's is 90% ADR.
Fair point.
Bad ADR.
I need to see that again.
Really bad ADR.
They should put that on the cover of the DVD.
It's hard to watch. Like, you go back and watch Weekend at Bernie's, and
I need to see it just for that, because you've told me that before.
Oh man, yeah.
But yeah, we walk away with absolute garbage in the can as far as that particular chunk of ADR is concerned. And then we get the acid story.
Yeah. Poor Mike. He's just rattling
the acid story.
I mean, we watched Salt Lake City Punk, so we know this can happen.
Actually, that's what's funny is this movie, like when I was watching it this time, I was like, huh, Kyle had me watch SLC Punk a while back, and it's making me think of that.
Yeah.
Like, this is a similar kind of story with a guy with a similar kind of mentality.
I was watching this. He was talking. I'm like, is he talking about a dream? Because it sounded like he was talking about a dream.
At first.
Yeah, and then you're like, oh no, this is real life. So apparently Mike he's been on the wagon for about a year and a half. He doesn't touch drugs or alcohol. He just has soda. He smokes cigarettes. He plays guitar. He's got some kind of job, I'm assuming. Maybe, I don't know. But if you haven't seen this yet, Mike is just not like you can tell something's not firing. He's just not all the way there anymore.
Yeah.
And
this would be why.
Yeah, he tells this story about how he has to go to the hospital and he's just completely out of it. And he's reaching in his pocket. I guess he has acid in his pocket, and he's like, he's so into drugs that he is trying to find the acid in his pocket so he can take it in the hospital again. But they kept him there, and they said that he had taken PCP. There may have been acid, but there was PCP in his system with some kind of downer. And he said that they kept me in the hospital for a month.
Yeah.
That is bad. That is really,
that's
really
insane.
bad. And seeing that, you're just like thinking back to the documentary, like, oh my God, he's just fried. He's honestly, it's like seeing Ozzy Osbourne. Like, I think Ozzy Osbourne has more to him now. Like,
yeah.
And I
think you're right.
That's how bad it is. Like, he definitely he took way too much of the wrong drug, and I think it pretty much just fried him. And
yeah, I mean, this impression that I've been doing of Mike, I think, is fairly accurate. He's mostly monotone for the most part, and he's just kind of comes across as very dopey. But I forgot when this happened in the documentary, but he has a pretty great quote here where he's like, "Here's what I think of lottery. It's like when you play the lottery, sometimes you win and sometimes you lose." But it's better than using drugs or alcohol, because when you use drugs and alcohol, especially drugs, you always lose.
yeah,
that's like his PSA for the whole movie.
he might be dependent on mom. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, well, what's funny is we didn't mention it, but he actually goes to group sessions for scratch tickets because he traded 1 or 2 addictions for that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is being mean or not, but after he finishes his story about his intense drug problem, we immediately cut to him smoking outside.
Well,
it's like, oh, he's not entirely in the clear.
You got to have a vice, and that's the best. I've noticed a lot of people working the steps. Cigarettes are good. You gotta switch it out. You gotta have something. You have to have something.
Yeah. Well, he has scratch tickets and cigarettes apparently.
I remember somebody in my family. They were on the wagon. They had to be on the wagon for probation, going through pots of coffee. I'm talking pots of coffee.
Wow.
And cigarettes. Like you gotta have something.
Yeah, I believe it, but
that's
wow,
tough.
That's gotta fuck you up. Like
I said, you gotta.
How many times do you pee a day?
It doesn't matter
God.
at that point. It doesn't matter. Like I have to have something. Yeah, it's sad, and it's. I think Mike probably was gonna go down a dark road either way. Like it was just it was bound to happen, and it just happened way sooner for him than it would have. Unfortunately, but yeah.
So Super Bowl Sunday, 1997.
Packers versus the Packs. This is Brett Favre.
Oh yeah. Would you call that a dynasty, or is that inaccurate?
Brett Favre is a very, very well-known quarterback. He definitely had his flaws. Nowhere near. I don't even think they've won that many Super Bowls with Favre. Like he was a big deal, but they're nowhere near the Brady Belichick. Okay. You can't touch it right now. Okay. They have, I think, the Brady Belichick duo have the most Super Bowl wins as a quarterback and head coach together.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure.
Who was the coach of the Packers in the late 90s?
Oh God, damn it! I have Bill. I had it. Bellum. I can't. I lost it. I had it. I'm not gonna get it. I'm gonna have to look it up.
That's okay.
Sorry.
We're not gonna get hung up on it, but if you want to throw it in there at the end.
No.
So we're watching the Super Bowl. Mom and Mark are watching it in the kitchen, and Mark's brother and his daughter and his dad are all watching it in the living room. And I told you off the air that kind of like spells it out to you on a visual level, like the dynamics of this family, where it's like Mark is on mom's side, and then the brothers are more than likely with dad.
Yeah.
And then Mike shows up, and he wants the money. Likely off of scratch tickets, and Mark immediately like hops out of his chair, and he's like, "Yeah, we can go to a tavern and get some beers."
Yeah.
And so he's just like counting the moments, like counting the minutes until this fucking Super Bowl ends, just so he can go get beers that it hasn't even been confirmed that he can get. It's like Mike never said yes, and apparently Mom is the person doing the driving, and she said no pretty much right away. But he's like dead set on this idea. Like he needs this to happen. And then he starts to get uppity because it becomes clear that he's not going to get what he wants.
No.
And he's already drunk, like big time.
Yeah, he's had a few. He's keeping his beers in the freezer, by the way. I don't know what that's all about.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I guess if he knew he was going to drink them right away.
I mean, if he's keeping them in the freezer, he must be crushing them. I mean, this is the Super Bowl, the halftime isn't that big a deal back then. So, like, what, 3.5 hours? He's probably gone through a case of beer. A couple, yeah. He's probably about 4 hours he's gone through a case of beer, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if his dad and his brother were drinking some, but Mike's not. Mom's not. So...
No, that's his case of Pabst.
If you're putting it in the freezer... you can't keep it in there that long. So yeah, he must have gone through it in one day. And then mom is like mutters to herself, he can never quit. When he starts drinking, he can never quit. And she says it at a volume where he can hear that. But this is more than likely the dynamic they have, where it's like she's the enabler, where she's clearly disapproving of what he's doing, but she's not going to put her foot down and really try to put a stop to it. But this is like the darkest moment probably in the whole fucking movie.
Yeah.
Because the game's still going. But I tried to write this quote down, but like he says, and I'm not going to say this in the Mark voice, but he says, every bitch-ass motherfucking factory worker is going to go down like that too, in response to, I think, a football, like somebody getting tackled on the field.
Yeah.
And Dad comes in. The timing of this was actually kind of funny in a very dark moment, but Dad pops his head around the corner and says, "Hey, Mark, none of that conversation," in response to him, dropping F-bombs and stuff. As soon as Dad's out of the frame, though, like Mark like hisses through his teeth, "I will never be like you 40-hour-a-week working motherfucker." And again, that speaks to his mentality, where it's just so much of his decision making is just based on that credo of just not being that guy, not being a normal person. Spring 1997. Sunrise to sunset in a public bathroom. I don't know what the fuck this was, but we're recording ADR. And apparently the acoustics we want are that of a public restroom.
I was trying to figure out what they were for too. Maybe in the film he's in the bathroom for this. I don't really know. I don't know.
But he needs his actor man to say the phrase sunrise to sunset in a public restroom. Yes. And then just the visual of a man sitting on a toilet in a public restroom while another man holds a microphone up to his face. At this point, we see Tom, and now he's grown a mustache. He doesn't wear it well.
No.
I will say that much. I don't think he looks good with a mustache.
He has a certain look, yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't want him in my neighborhood if I had
No.
kids. But he says a few words about Mark here, and he says that he admires him because he's indomitable, and he's not wrong.
No.
The man is persistent. And then we get maybe the greatest scream in cinema history.
It's so good. Everybody.
It's so good.
If Mike had nothing else going for him, but like all his screaming recording is going well, but Mike's scream, it's in the trailer, for crying out loud.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I sent the trailer to Steph. I was trying to explain this to her. I'm like, can I just send you the trailer so you can get an idea of what we're talking about? The trailer is really good, but yeah,
really?
First thing is him screaming. And you get...
it's amazing.
It's really good.
Yeah, Mike Shank can fucking scream. He channels some demons.
He's like, scream like you're in hell, like you're burning in hell. Like he has everybody do it. And there's some pretty good ones, but yeah, Mike's is really good.
Yeah, I mean, the thespian Robert the thespian, he has a decent one, except for it's more like a hooting and like, ooh, oh, oh, oh. It's like, ooh, that's hot. But yeah, Mike's is like primal, like he sounds like
chilling.
He's dying.
Yeah,
it's chilling. And I love the build up to it, where like Mark just says like, "Okay, I'm gonna say go," and then like go in like a couple seconds, okay, and you just see like Mike go. It's just like, and the punchline though is Mark like holding his headphones, and he's just got this big shit-eating grin on his face. He's like, "That was pretty wicked, man."
Oh, yeah.
I was like, "Yes, that is the correct response to that." Then we get our photo session with Robert the thespian and the fine gal.
Yes.
Off in the woods.
Milwaukee's best.
Milwaukee's best. Mark is directing the photographer to make sure to get her chest in the frame. I don't think he did, because the flyers do not include that. And then we get a really cute moment where Mark is watching the Oscars with Joan. And it's like, I would be tempted to slip that into the documentary too, where it's like, oh, this inept filmmaker is watching the Oscars. I wonder how that makes him feel. We're doing some more ADR stuff. People getting dragged through the woods and stuff, through the swamp. Mark is directing traffic on the shoot there. around this time is when we get the interview with the dad where he mentions that Uncle Bill was a scholar at one point. More important, though, we get an interview where Mark is being interviewed by like the local newspaper. And this is where he reiterates that concept of like the frontier and about how drinking and like the drama and the thrill that come from that are like the essence of all the stories that he's trying to tell. That's like what he idolizes about living. And we get that moment where the newspaper editor or whatever is interviewing him and like pauses for a second. He's like, but what do you mean by that? He's like, could you try to explain it a little better? And I still don't quite know what he's getting at, likely because I never lived that life. But I think it's just like a moment in time or something that maybe he looks at with like rose-tinted glasses, where it's like being a young teenager with a camera and a beer that's his happy place. That's his happy time. And he doesn't quite know how to express it, but somehow like that's key to the stories that he's trying to tell.
I think he's trying to capture a mood that he was in, and that was the world's in front of me. And I've got everything I need. I got my beer, I got my camera. It's all in front of me, and he's still trying to capture that, but he doesn't have that anymore, and he's not going to recapture that. He's
a little bit delusional in the sense that it's like you have a beer and a camera in one hand, yes, but you also have 3 kids, no real steady job, and you live with mom. Mm-hmm. So maybe drop the camera and the beer and start doing something about it. And then I think it's during Uncle Bill's dinner that Mom mentions on camera that she thinks Ken Keene and Mark are a bad influence on each other. Yeah. And we get this lovely editing moment where Ken Keene is like, I think peer pressure's bullshit. Yeah. And then the very next cut is Mark driving, and he's like, yeah, we're here to pick up Ken from jail.
I laughed so hard.
Beautiful.
It was great.
That's beautiful.
I'm like, yep, picking up Ken from jail.
Yeah, and I don't know what he did, but apparently, like, a bunch of detectives, like, raided his house or something.
Yeah, that's when I thought it was going to take a drug turn. He probably had weed or something. And they seem like they're not in Milwaukee. I think, are they in Milwaukee? I think they're outside in the smaller town.
It's a small town.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's nearby.
It was probably just weed in the 90s, my goodness.
Yeah, it's never explicitly stated what he did, but I mean, I don't think he was gone that long.
No.
At least I didn't get that sense watching the film.
He was probably, I can tell you what he did. He was selling weed. That's what he was doing.
I wouldn't be surprised.
That's what I'm guessing.
But yeah, at this point, everybody's helping out editing the film, and oh my god, it is a production. We get a fun moment in the junkyard where Mike Shank is smashing windows, and they're recording the audio. You can tell they're having a lot of fun doing that. Yeah. I would have a lot of fun doing that. Then Mark has to explain what the word cathartic means to Mike, and it's a cute little friendly moment. Summer 1997. Robert the Thespian tells us that by the premiere date for Coven, that will mark about just over 3 years of production. That's a decent chunk of time. I mean, that's like not what Richard Linklater numbers, but that's still 3 years. That's quite a bit of time to put into. Yeah, it's quite a bit of time to put into a 35-minute film. We get a fun little episode here where Mike Shank and I called him Stumbles because this guy, just looking at him, I had zero confidence in him as a human being. I was like, that's an idiot. It's like, they somehow lost like all the flyers for the movie that they were supposed to be putting up around the university, and it takes like 5 minutes to tell the story of how they lost the flyers, and like every word of it, you're just like, just tell me you're an idiot and you fucked up, and call it a day. But no, we have to go through this whole song and dance. Memorial Day, 1997. Mark is taking down flags, and this is where we get the poop story. So Mark tells us that at some point during his workday, he got called in to the restroom of the cemetery because he had to clean up some shit. Not like a mess in the toilet, but like on the toilet. And he has this pretty profound quote here where he's like, "I'm 30 years old, and in about 10 seconds, I gotta start cleaning up somebody's shit, man." And I don't know, it was like a moment where it started to click a little bit. It probably didn't register as strongly as it needed to, but started to click a little bit that, like, man, I need to make some changes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think the last drama that happens before Coven's release is somehow, and I mean, he has Mom, he has Mike Shank, he has Ken Keane handling the editing of his film, so I don't imagine at all how this could have happened, but somehow they lost 2 frames of the movie. Lost. Meaning somewhere his film has like two frames that are just blank, just missing. And I can understand how that would throw you into a bit of a panic, especially with like 2 days before the thing's supposed to come out. And it just speaks to what I mentioned earlier about like digital versus analog.
Mm-hmm.
Like, imagine the same guy with different tools. This likely would not have happened if he was doing like a digital film shot on the cheap. But because he's dealing with 16 millimeter that needs to be developed and cut by hand and shit, stuff like this can happen, especially when you have a bunch of people who don't know what they're doing the editing for you. So we go to the premiere. I believe the premiere date is June 12th, 1997.
Yep.
And it actually looks kind of lively. Like,
yeah.
This was a decent crowd. Like, it actually looked like a fun little event here. And Uncle Bill shows up. Dad's there too. And then we finally get to see some footage of Coven. And what'd you think, Kyle?
It didn't look too bad, honestly. I would actually like to watch it. I want to see what the finished product is. Nice shots. They actually show some of the shots in the trailer, and they actually don't show them in the film here. So having the trailer shots of Coven and the shots here, I'm like, yeah, I want to see how it turned out, because I think it probably turned out pretty decent for how much time and effort went into it, considering the resources this guy had. He had one fucking camera.
Yeah, no joke, man. He had one fucking camera, and as far as I could tell, no real crew.
No.
And I don't know what they were doing for lighting, but I'm sure like all the outdoor stuff, they just had to do natural lighting.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of the black and white images actually look calculated. They actually look good.
Yeah.
And yeah, I do have it available to me, so I'd like to watch it as well. But yeah, it's kind of funny because, you know, Mark, who's normally so quick when he's on the microphone, like after the movie's over, he's like babbling. Like, he's basically incoherent. Like,
Yeah.
he says some stuff about like he does like a shout out to Mike Shank about how like you're like, I'm glad you're happy, Mike. Like, don't drink. You're gonna set the world's record, and then he just kind of like wanders off the stage. It's really weird. Like, you can tell he was in a weird headspace, because normally he'd have a lot of stuff to say, but he just kind of like says a few things and marches off the stage.
He's disheveled. He's just trying to like thank people. He's like, I probably missed some people. I'm sorry if I missed you. Like, thank you so much. Like, he's really grateful, but also it's like his art's out there. Like, it's a finished product, and he's probably got a lot going on in his head, especially after watching it.
I mean, like you said, I mean, I hate to say it, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was disappointed.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the life of an artist, is to forever be dissatisfied with what you're doing. Just, but I believe the closing scene is Mark and Uncle Bill, and they're sitting on Uncle Bill's like porch for his trailer, and Mark is trying to be encouraging of Uncle Bill. He's like congratulating Uncle Bill on his investment, saying like, are you ready to do the next one? Like, we need $50,000 or whatever to make it. And like Uncle Bill's just, you can tell actually like Uncle Bill's a little bit happier than normal.
Mm-hmm.
He's more receptive to what Mark has to say, and he's like, yeah, okay, whatever. But we get this moment here where like Mark is talking about the American dream, and we haven't really talked about much, but that phrase is something that he throws around a lot, like the American dream. And then at some point, Uncle Bill like puts his head down, like in between his knees, and you can tell he's like thinking really hard. Like he's gathering up his thoughts and his words. And then he just lifts his head and he says some stuff that's borderline incoherent about like, it's almost like nature of life kind of stuff, where it's like, yeah, you come, stay a while, make people laugh, make everybody happy, and then you're gone. And it's like, I'm still struggling to understand what he was trying to get out there, but I feel like he was trying to impart some sort of knowledge to Mark, like, your dreams are fleeting in some ways, like they could just be that, dreams. So like maybe get your priorities straight or something.
Mm-hmm.
But it was some sort of response to what Mark was saying, and you could tell he had some measure of frustration about him, but it just, the way it was phrased was very, very hazy. I didn't quite get it, but it spoke to me on an emotional, like just a purely emotional level. Then we learned that Bill died September 13th, 1997, and he left Mark $50,000 to finish the filming of Northwestern, which apparently he never did, which is kind of sad. That would have been really cool if he did, but that's unfortunate. And then the closing shots of the film are like varied shots of Mark's films from over the years at different stages in life. And it's just a bunch of clips from all of his different movies of like him, Ken Keene, and Mike Shank dicking around. And then Mr. Bojangles plays over the credits. And that's American Movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it was a fun ride. It was, it had ups and downs. This isn't, this one has more heart. I feel like it's definitely going to tug at you a little bit. It's going to make you kind of mad. It's going to make you sad. Not so much like Death of Superman Lives, where it's just sad the whole way through. We were robbed of a Tim Burton Superman movie, but yeah, it's definitely worth checking out.
No, I think it's just good old-fashioned human drama, where it's like, no matter what place you come from, like you've seen these people at some point in your life, and if you can find empathy for those people, then you can find a way to enjoy this story.
Yeah.
And it's about troubled people that don't really have the best starting point in life, I'd assume. But I don't know, it as somebody who tries to go out on creative endeavors every once in a while, this movie works for me. It's something that I put on every once in a while when I need like a little bit of motivation to do something.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it on some level. Anyway, so that was American Movie from 1999, directed by Chris Smith. I believe I get next pick for next week again.
I think so.
I think we're going in chronological order, like order of release. So we did Hearts of Darkness, which was 1991, and this was 1999, and Kung Fu Elliot is 2013. So yeah, that would be me again, and then you get to close out the month. So yeah, next week we'll be covering Kung Fu Elliot, which I'm arguably more excited about covering than this one, but we'll see what your opinion is of it. Anyway, thanks for joining us. Catch you next time.
Yeah.